Good morning and welcome to the informal board meeting for Savannah-Chatham County Board of Education. This meeting is scheduled and set up via video conference. This is Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020. The prime reason that we have informal meetings is to gather information. As I say each month, we do not vote on any item during informal, but use it strictly as an information gathering time. A week and a half or 2 weeks ago, we had a 3-hour workshop on reimagining our schools as we deal with the COVID epidemic. Today is a continuation of that meeting. I would tell the public who can watch this live as it is streamed or go on later to watch it, that we've had over 3,300 citizens watch the first session of 3 hours. I don't know that we've ever had that many people watch our meetings at all, and it says such wonderful things to me, at least, of the interest in our citizens and parents and students about what the future looks like for this. And so this morning we have 4 presentations that continue the agenda we got before, and after each one, if you would just, they're brief presentations again, please as board members hold your questions until each section is done, and then I'll open it up for questions. The first one has to do with virtual learning options from Academic Affairs, and this is for 2020, 2021.
Good morning.
Morning.
Ms. Ball Oliver and I are here today to briefly share any answers to any questions you may have on the overall questions that you may have on the virtual learning plan as it relates to Savannah-Chatham County Public School System. Our objective is to create and provide a structured online learning opportunity for students in grades, students in grades 3 through 12 that will allow students to access 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, their learning assignments. Our virtual plan is necessary in order to address our distance learning needs, which include online learning at the school level and Twilight, the Savannah-Chatham e-learning academy, and remote learning. It is also necessary in an effort to address the learning deficits that may have occurred as a result of school outages. And it includes the new addition of the new Savannah-Chatham e-learning academy.
Good morning. So with the Savannah-Chatham e-learning academy, the academy is designed for grades 3 through 12. We have a targeted enrollment for year 1 of approximately 900 students, and our families will be able to begin registration for the e-learning academy July 1, 2020. We will be operating in alignment with the academic school year calendar for the entire district. While we have various grade spans, of course, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12, our hours of operation are 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., but our schedules that will be designed will be specific to those grade spans. Also, for staffing and services that are provided, we have an administrator, an e-learning specialist, information specialist, teacher, and counselor. These persons will be providing the teachers direct instruction as well as two-way instruction. Support services will be provided as well. We are serving students that have an individualized education plan, as well as providing models in alignment with the state for our students that may receive services through REP, EIP, ELL, and GIFT. Teaching and learning. We are providing courses in the 4 content areas: ELA, math, science, and social studies. Of course, for our advanced students, we will have advanced placement, dual enrollment. All students will have an opportunity for world language, CTAE, as well as specials and elective courses. We do have specific days that are identified for face-to-face lab participation, which is one of those things that sets us apart from a number of virtual learning schools. Dr. Lewis will speak more about this later in the presentation. Chromebooks and laptop devices will also be provided for our students upon enrollment. And as it pertains to athletics, all students in grades 6 through 12 will be able to participate in esports. If you're not aware, we did do a pilot in some sites this past school year, and it was very successful. Our students in 9-12 will be able to also participate on our district athletic teams, which will operate under DHSA rules for golf, swimming, and tennis. We are also applying to ensure that we are NCAA accredited in regards to our courses. So the fiscal impact, the objective, of course, is to use our available resources, including human resources, to staff the school. As mentioned before, Chromebooks will be issued to enrollees. However, they're coming from the current allotment, thus it would not be considered as an additional cost. And supplies and materials for labs and other hands-on instructional activities will be discussed further by Dr. Lewis.
Additional fiscal impact on the program would be professional learning for teachers who will receive online learning teaching endorsement. Also providing opportunities for students to be able to complete lab assignments at home. By purchasing individual supplies and tools, students will be able to complete assignments and show mastery by face-to-face instruction with the teacher online. Also, as far as the end of pathway assessment is concerned, because students are those tests are only ordered at the end of the completion, that cost will be absorbed by the grants that we apply for through federal programs, and we will continue to apply for grants as we have done in the past through Perkins 5 and CTA.
Our final is that there will be a cost associated with the purchasing of the learning management system that will be used in the academy, but this system will be used across the district, and so purchase of that system cannot totally be attributed to the virtual academy since it is district-wide. And at this time, are there any questions?
Any questions from board members? And I need to see the screen where I can see board members, please.
Yes, I have one.
Ms. Hall?
For E-Academy students, are all connections to their home school erased so that they are totally independent of the home school where they are now? And if so, are there some board member? I see they have a principal and a specialist and all of that. So what is the setup for that?
So it is a virtual academy, it is a virtual school. They do have a separate school code. So they are connected to the Savannah Chatham E-Learning Academy, and not like a program in terms of being connected to a home site. This is their home school, and I honestly cannot answer the question regarding a board member. That is something that we would have to investigate, unless Mr. Henniker or someone can shed light on that and provide you with a response.
Okay. Now, if they enroll and then after a semester they find it's not working as they thought, they can then go back to their home school?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Howard Hall?
Yes, two questions. First, what is the selection of, the criteria of selecting students? Is it first come, first serve with the waiting list? And then the event that a student may decide that this is not best, then you go to the waiting list? And also, what level of accountability and support are we providing for parents that may choose this option?
As far as choosing whether or not to attend the school, it's on a first come, first served basis. The students will complete an application just as they would if they were enrolling into any of the schools in Chatham County. And the wait list is developed based on the number of seats that we have, if it's capped. And then as students rotate out and we need to bring up students in, we possibly can.
And then in terms of the support structure for parents, and I think Mr. Hediger may show this later, not sure, but there is a website that's being developed. So when we open the academy, there will be an orientation. Of course, we will adhere to all CDC guidelines and operate under whatever parameters have been established for our opening. But at that time, they'll receive their device as well as an orientation. There is a very specific and detailed handbook that is under development to provide them with supports. And then they will have web-based supports as well. There is a counselor. That counselor is not just there for students per se, but also to provide support for parents. And there is a system and a structure for them to be able to establish meetings and conferences with the counselor, the administrator, and the teachers. And the beauty of having this operate under our district is that if in fact there is a requirement for additional meetings, provided we're able to do those face-to-face, that we can conduct those as well.
Thank you.
I have Dr. Hoskins Brown, Dr. Brinkman, and Mr. Hall, and Ms. Wade.
Mr. Hall?
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Johnson. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. I appreciate the detail on how the academy is going to operate. My question is similar to Paul's in that if you're in a neighborhood school and it doesn't work for you, this academy, go back to your neighborhood school. If you are at in a choice program and you go to this academy, have you forfeited your seat in the choice program?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that all, Dr. Hoskins Brown? Okay, I have Dr. Brinkman, Mr. Johnson, Ms. Wade.
Thank you, as everyone else has said, for this presentation. I was wondering about teacher recruitment. I've had a couple teachers reach out to me saying I'm in a protected population due to health. I actually enjoyed teaching online for the last semester, 9 weeks. How do I go about seeing if I could be a part of this e-learning academy?
So we will be in further contact with HR as we finish this presentation, and moving forward, we will put something out in terms of getting teachers to apply. I will tell you that we will definitely be examining that population and meeting the needs of our staff, but also understanding that there will be criteria for teaching in a virtual world, because we have to make sure that our students are getting the best instruction possible. So there will be a competency-based portion of that interest that they would have to actually perform for us virtually in that virtual world, so that we ensure that we have the best fit for our students as well.
If there are teachers listening now, should they wait to get messaging from the district, or is there a person that, if they wanted to show interest now, that they should contact?
We will have messaging out, but they are welcome to send emails, because we have been getting some as well, but there will be messaging out, and I would suggest that they continue to monitor the website, because that's what we'll be doing.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, Ms. Wade.
Thank you for this presentation. It does clarify a lot of the questions that I've had in the past couple of weeks. I appreciate that. One question that I have been getting in though is, why are we capping the e-learning student population at 900?
That is not the cap, that is what we want to start with. if we need to grow, we will grow as needed. We started with approximately 900 to give us a gauge as to how many licenses that we will need to purchase from whatever online service that we use.
Okay. And the other question I keep getting as well, and I do believe that the superintendent needs this at the workshop. I just wanted to make sure that the public is also clear for those who haven't watched the workshop with that. For those parents who do not want to send their kids to the site school, they want to keep their kids in the site, they will still be able to use, the sites are still going to have the capability to use virtual learning. Is that correct?
Yes, they will have, we will have the online learning. You're talking about the students, for example, if the student was enrolled at Savannah Arts Academy, but they wanted to take online courses?
Correct, and to be able to keep their seat at Savannah Arts.
Thank you. I think the school schedules will drive that. We will always, of course, for our high schools have our twilight and online courses, but I think as we reimagine school, a lot of that will be decided through how that is designed. So at this point, we could not, in the design of this, elaborate on those details, but definitely our online learning programs will still be there for course offerings, but it may not be as extensive or for the entire school day. I can't speak to that at this time, but definitely programs like our Twilight and so forth, and the ability to take online courses will be a part of our virtual learning plan.
Thank you.
Ms. Wade?
Thank y'all very much. First of all, I want to just commend everyone putting this together so quickly. I think this is going to be a really great tool in our learning toolbox, not just through the COVID crisis, but ongoing. I think there will be families that continue to use this throughout the year as education looks different. I think it's a way to attract some homeschool families into the public school system. So I just want to commend everyone on what I think has been a really thoughtful, intentional process and a great addition to our school offerings. I do want to, and we talked about this a little with the HR, I do want to make sure that this isn't kind of where all the teachers who don't want to teach in the school building come. I mean, we have teachers already in our workforce that have online teaching training and experience, and those I think we should be tapping on. But I'm not an educator, but I understand that there's a very different skill set to teach online versus to teach in the classroom, and I hope that we're recruiting the best teachers we have to teach online and that have that skill set. I do have a question about the labs. I think that's great to offer. Is that going to be a requirement or is that just an option?
As far as the CTAE labs are concerned, in order to complete the class, they will have to complete a lab.
Okay.
So if a student, for example, was in culinary, of course, students that's in the building every day, they're in the kitchen every day. The lab, however, will work for virtual learning. For example, if they're learning if they're doing a lesson on pastry, what we would do is set up an opportunity for students to come out of schools, pick up their packet, which would consist of their ingredients that will be needed. They cannot open the packet until the date of the lab. So if they have lab on Friday, they will probably pick it up on Wednesday, and then on Friday they will have a lab. They'll have a lab with the chef, two-way communication. That's one. The other may be if it's welding or construction, where it's more skill-based, where we cannot allow them to have tools, even in engineering, where they use saws, and we don't want anybody cutting off anything. So those students will set up appointments to come in and be a part of that lab, because as a part of their industry certification, in order for them to receive their certification, they're going to have to demonstrate skill. So we're very flexible. CTAE has allowed us to be very flexible on how we complete the labs.
Great, thank you. And then I just wanted to voice my opinion on children that, obviously you can always go to your home school, all you need is your electric bill, but children that decide to do online learning instead of their choice program, I do think at least initially for this first year, we should allow that child to return to that choice program, because you're really putting parents in an impossible situation where they're risking losing their seat in their desired school, but they're not comfortable sending their child. One of the benefits of this is it's pulling some of our kids out of the schools throughout the district to reduce the number of kids in that school. And so there's really no downside to allowing that child to come back a year later. I think long-term, if this continues, we may want to revisit that, but I do think for this first year, given kind of very difficult decisions that all parents are making, we should allow children to return to their choice school either in January 2021 or August 2021, so that parents can make the best choice for their kids without jeopardizing their long-term decisions.
If I could ask a question, and maybe this is understood and I'm just asking something that I should already understand. But as we start the school, will students be put into traditional kinds of classrooms from the standpoint of, will 25 students be assigned to Mr. Smith, who's that teacher? Or will teachers rotate? Or will they teach several teachers teach a group of students? How will that work?
So when we begin, students will have schedules very much like they do in terms of at the traditional school. You do have teachers of record, and they will have teachers that are assigned to them as instructors. Looking at a number of options, so more at your secondary side, you may have rotating teachers in terms of Ms. Ball Oliver teaches these 25 students, 9th grade ELA, during this time in the morning, but another 25 students may have a different teacher. In our lower grades, of course, we look for consistency so that those students are with that particular teacher for that grade level and our subject area or course. So the students will not change out teachers for their math lessons every other week or every other day. So they will have consistency in regards to who's providing their instruction for that particular course. And yes, there could be some team teaching, especially as we look to provide services for our students with an IP, as well as we may just have some team teaching because it's a really good fit for that particular course, or it is an interdisciplinary unit, and we have a little bit more flexibility in the virtual world.
One more question. Saying grade 3 through grade 12, will grades be sacred? I mean, if a student is a third grader and very technologically savvy and smart, would they have the possibility of taking 4th and 5th grade stuff, or do they stay with a third grade?
When they enter, they would be in 3rd grade, but we are looking at, as we build the school, how will we handle enrichment and advancement, which again is another benefit. Of course, we have a lot more flexibility to support that structure in a virtual world. So looking at how that works, but ensuring that we put those assessments and competencies in place, because we will still be responsible for district assessments. So we will have to be mindful of that in terms of how we move kids across grade spans at our lower grades, or 3 through 8, because we will still be responsible for all state assessments.
Thank you. Any other final questions? Oh, Ms. Hines, excuse me.
Yes. So my throat is a little cloudy, but let me just ask about the online classes for the regular biological classes, physics, chemistry, high school, basically. If your parents decide to take the online learning, how would those children do their laboratory experiences?
Their labs will run similar to the CTAE classes, where the students, whatever materials that we can provide for students to do the labs at home, we will. But the more dangerous items that they may use, they'll have an opportunity to come on campus to work with those instructors. Of course, rights and safety.
Any other final questions about the virtual learning options before we move on to instructional
I
platforms?
have one, Dr. Buck.
Okay, Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
It sounded like the instruction for culinary students was going to be something like HelloFresh, where they're going to get a box of everything they need to prepare the meal, and they'll be able to perform on the parent instructor. Are we exploring options like that for safe biology or other kinds of physical science things that students can receive a kit at home?
Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for the presentation. If we could move on to data and accountability instructional platforms, please.
Yes, sir. Good morning. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, now we're covering today technology platforms and solutions for school year 2021. COVID-19 has significantly disrupted the teaching and learning process and has transformed education and central support services throughout the district. The presentation today will cover our two main areas, instructional technology and administrative technology. Under instructional technology, we have conducted an RFP process for a learning management system and expect to have it selected this month. Average deployment of this project takes around 2 months. We are fast tracking it to production for our year. The system will provide accountability, structure, and consistency for online teaching and learning. It will serve as a communication and collaboration platform for teaching, learning, and staff professional development. It will provide the capability to create personalized learning paths for students. So based on a great outcome, the teacher can pre-assign support activities and resources that automatically become available for the student to access and complete. Web portal services will be provided to this platform for administrators, teachers, students, and parents. This way, administrators can see the teacher's work, teachers can see the student's work, and parents can see the student's work. One very critical component we're looking at or is the support for smartphones. One students have the ability to access the entire platform through a smartphone app. This means their courses, activities, quizzes, exams, grades, discussion boards, emails, and especially calendars with due dates and events. When it comes to student technology devices, in the month of April, close to 7,000 devices were deployed, and to date, 59 have been returned for break fix. That's less than 1%. Also in April, May, over 3,000 Chromebook devices were ordered using local and community donated funds. Away from now, the COVID-19 pandemic, we appear to be far from a normal school movement. 14,000 additional student devices were just ordered to assist us with remote and online learning. This item is included in the regular board meeting today and voted on as a ratification. Orders are MacBook Airs for Groves High School and iPads that we provide for grades K through 2. The life cycle of these portable devices is about 4 to 5 years, and support and yearly refresh rate will be around $3 million a year. Logistics on deployment has not been worked out. We're working on this along with academic affairs and operations. I do want to say that we do support the use of personal devices and encourage parents to purchase them for their children. Wireless internet access. This is a topic of concern not only locally but across the nation. There has been legislative talk on relaxing the rate rules while funding support for wireless devices. But no change has been made today. We looked at different ways to provide a solution to this need. Devices. Prices range from around $16 to $20 a month. Comcast Internet Essentials for high-speed internet runs $9.95 a month. However, this is a solution we can't provide directly to our students. Families Monitors, monitoring internet access, the total cost of ownership for 2 years was around $1.3 million. We have in place, we have limited hotspots provided to BG and Verizon. Planning to deploy 10 smart bus solutions with solar bus scheduled and placed throughout the county to provide internet access. We're also expanding our wireless capabilities in parking lot areas for students to use. We have also posted information on the public website for peers on Comcast Data Essentials, AT&T, and other resources, and a link from the State Department that shows free Wi-Fi locations across Georgia. We are detecting an increase of student account activities coming from outside the nation. We have enabled factor authentication upon students connecting. We're also looking to see how we can enable this for all high school students for this coming year. The system has been upgraded to support the shift from remote and working. We now have the ability to update the devices that are outside the district network. Finally, we increase our student campaign on cyber safety and security. Under administrative technology with the pandemic, our only loss and stability. Hotspots can occur at any time. Staff members can quarantine and isolated. Flexibility is critical to our support staff. We need to be able to work
Maybe you just ignored it.
Brain system is still a priority for us. We started this project in 2019. We plan to go live in 2020. December 1st to be exact. Recruitment and our whole sessions have been online using Microsoft Teams and GoToMeetings for discussions, configuration, and training. Those go to the finance, HR, and business information systems department. Not only adjusting their work schedule for the replacement of the legacy system, but also adjusting their work schedule again due to COVID-19 pandemic. That provided better support for our teleworkers. Processes online. This has helped the administration tremendously in keeping the work forward public. Concerning our teleworkers, tonight we have gone from a handful of remote workers to the majority of industry. Has severely impacted our resources. The public website operating in the cloud was overloaded for the West. We struggled through it and have made significant changes to improve its performance for the upcoming school year. Not only survive a hurricane now, it will survive the pandemic. The district phone system. We're doing changes to the phone systems to allow remote workers to use district telephone numbers instead of their personal numbers. This will be done from software loaded on their laptops and connect to our phone system. At laptop devices, in May we ordered 1,000 laptop devices for staff personnel. We're expecting to do additional orders later on. We are also exploring deploying desktop devices to homes. When it comes to cybersecurity, as you know, with the pandemic, there's always an opportunity for cyber criminals. There has been an increase in ransomware attacks. In the last 3 months, there were 15 million blocked malicious or questionable emails trying to enter our district. That's 76% of the messages that are coming in. So we're doing additional improvements to enhance our email protection. We have also upgraded our VPN solution to better monitor and control allowed access to sensitive systems. Finally, we will be conducting and holding campaigns on cybersecurity and awareness on the latest tactics being used to
Could I have questions from board members, please?
Dr. Hoskins Brown.
I continue to be impressed with how technology has been managed and rolled out, at the onset of the pandemic, and also the planning that we did as far back as in the budgeting for E3. So I just want to commend you on the work that you've done in that area. One of the things that I find striking in the technology plan are the MiFi buses. We've talked about that for years, and I'm just kind of, so I'm glad that 10 are being rolled out. I just want to know kind of maybe a thumbnail sketch, would be not an exact dollar amount, but, roughly how much does it cost to put solar panels and a MiFi router on a bus for the community?
That's a good question. So for the 10 smart bus solutions that we provided, the total cost of ownership for 2 years is $22,500.
Okay, so that's not a lot to move internet technology out into the community. That's really encouraging, and so hopefully that means we will be positioned to expand this more in the future. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I have Dr. Howard Howell and Mr. Johnson. Dr.
Mr. Brinkman was next.
I'm sorry, Dr.
I don't have a question. I'm just getting tons of messages saying that our feed is very garbled and people cannot understand anything that our presenters are saying. So a lot of people are getting echoing, and other people say they can barely hear, not enough to understand what's going on. So I didn't know what might be able to be done moving forward for our formal meeting this afternoon. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
What, Mr. Hagan?
Thank you, sir. We've corrected the audio issue, so the public is hearing us loud and clear. So moving forward, everyone will have full audio. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Howard Howell, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, there are definitely layers of issues that we have discussed, and I'm very appreciative. I'm thankful for the Department of Data and Accountability as well as Academic Affairs, because they work hand in hand together. And I just ask that we continue to have our wonderful partnerships with our broadband providers, and also the link that's available for parents to receive assistance. Just want to make sure that we get that information out. Not all, we can post it sometimes, but some people still may not know, so maybe we can just become a little creative to ensure that we are contacting those families that are in our low income families that need assistance with internet, and to make them aware of the links that are available so they can receive assistance. Again, thanks to both departments, because one cannot work without the other. You all are doing a great job with this in a very short amount of time, and I thank you all for doing that.
Thank you, Dr. Howard Howell. Mr. Johnson. And
I just want to echo what Dr. Hoskins mentioned about the smart buses. I know we've been speaking about this for a few years now, especially since I've been on the board. And I'm just glad to see that that we'll get those things rolled out for those students who do not have widely accessible internet access. So I really do appreciate everyone's hard work with it.
Ms. Hall.
First, I'd like to say I don't know if anything can be done, but Michael's audio doesn't come across well. It's sounding a bit muffled. If anything can be done about that. I want to add to what Dr. Hoskins Brown said, that I have received so many calls from parents and students actually about the fact that having a Chromebook at home has just, it seems, revolutionized how they feel about their learning experience. So we have become heroes to a lot of families by that gesture, and I hope that it's going to show itself in the achievement of the kids going forward. And I wanted, Mr. Feliciano, if you could just amplify a bit what using a smart bus is going to be like. Who's going to monitor it? How, if 100 kids come to use it at the same time, what are the parameters for that?
Well, one of the things, we wanted to get the orders in first. And the logistics and schedule on deployment, the locations, that's going to require a combination of discussions with academic affairs and operations to see when we can free up the buses, what are the times, the locations, the evenings, the weekends, or even throughout the day. Where do we strategically place them for a few hours? Because obviously what we don't want to do is keep it in the same location. We want to move it around. We want to provide the community with a schedule so they know exactly when the buses will be there for free Wi-Fi for our students.
Okay, speak a bit about monitoring of the students on the bus.
So the Wi-Fi connections will be filtered, and you have to have an account. It is not free for everyone or the community. So you have to have a legitimate account with the district that will allow you to connect, and it allow you to surf the internet in a filtered fashion.
Okay, I guess my last question is, if I decide I'm doing my work and I decide to pick a fight with Dr. Hoskins Brown on the bus, who is there to mediate that kind of thing?
As far as, that goes back to the logistics when we talk about if we schedule, let's say, a bus to be at a location for 4 hours or 3 hours, then we will have a staff member there.
Okay.
With the bus. Okay, but if we decide to, let's say, leave it over a weekend, then the bus is parked and left in the parking lot over the weekend. So those scenarios, we have not done internal discussions on, but certainly we're more than happy to listen to how the board member feels about different scenarios when deploying the smart buses throughout the county.
Okay, thank you.
Could I ask, again, I know that we've been somewhat successful in the community in having people donate Chromebooks. How many Chromebooks have been donated from the community for us?
And that's a very good question. As of now, we have $82,000 that have been donated and that purchased 385 Chromebooks for the district.
Thank you. And that 82,000 is everything that has come in, including promised ones.
If there have been additional donations in the last week or two, those have not been included in this number.
Okay, I thought we were higher than that, but
Yes, sir. Actually, we're up to 114,000 on the community donations for the technology drive for Chromebooks. So we're very excited and appreciate the support of the community. And Superintendent will share more about that in her report during the regular session.
And do you have to sit on the bus to use the Wi-Fi if you were to drive up in a car and sit there? Does it extend outside the bus or what?
Yes, sir. The Wi-Fi system will extend so parents can park around the bus to have access to the Wi-Fi.
Thank you. Any other questions of board members? Ms. Hines? Ms. Hines?
Yes. Mr. Feliciano, is there any, I almost forgot my question. Is there any particular location that the buses, where will they be located? Near a school or in a grocery parking lot, or how have you decided that?
I think one of the targeted areas is going to be within the community where the majority of the students are that need internet access.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Feliciano. I just would second what everyone else has said. You folks are amazing. You've done and that number you just gave about the people with trying to break into our system was just amazing to me. But anyway, thank you very much for your continued work with making certain our students and learn as they need to. Moving on to staffing, human resources. Mr. Ray, is it your show?
Yes, I'm ready, sir.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes. Good morning, board members and superintendent and cabinet. Wanted to go over and I'll share my screen. Just give me a second. To share my screen. Okay, I should be sharing my screen now. Just wanted to go over the HR side of the reopening plan considerations and just kind of a overview of what we've done so far. From the start of this pandemic, we've been at the forefront of being able to, with all the other divisions, working through the issues that started out with employees returning to work. And so we've been dealing with that with about 800 employees that have been physically coming to work. So that's been helpful for us to kind of project what we will be doing as it relates to going into the we'll have all of our staff back. Some of the our priority is going to be the vulnerable populations and to have our work accommodations. So we'll have processes that we will be working through to make sure we have work accommodations for all of our employees. So that'll be something that will be an option for employees that are in those vulnerable populations. Everything is not going to be 100%. We go through a process of working through whatever the individual accommodations are, and we will work through those as we normally do through a normal process. We will be working remotely more for those staff that are able to do it and situations are able to do that. It does decrease the number of employees that we have in a building, which will be helpful in any of our buildings. So certainly as we think about social distancing, as we think about our work environments, we need to ensure that we are at the same time able to do our remote work, because that's kind of where we've been the last few months, is the majority of our staff in a remote environment. We do know we're going to have a physical environment to return to, but we also know we're creating other virtual scenarios such as the e-learning academy and different work environments that we have in our schools. It will be critical for us over time, this has been stressful for many of our students and our parents and our faculty alike. And so we will, have to address those when we get back into environment. It'll be about 6 months since we were last in school. So that is something that, we don't know what will actually happen. We don't know how many staff will be impacted about returning, but there may be a lot of anxiety with returning. We know there will be anxiety for students returning. So we'll just deal with those factors or those as they come to pass. We will be following the CDC guidelines. PPE is going to be something that will be something that we will actually focus on and make sure that when we come out with our plan, that will be in mind. What are we going to do related to PPE? What are we going to do related to the CDC guidance? And we will follow those and do the best we can to make sure we're starting off our school year in the safest fashion that we can for all, just not only students, but also for staff. And that will be something that we will be working towards. We need to set clear expectations for distance learning. As was mentioned earlier by, I think, Ms. Wade, not every teacher can teach in a virtual environment. And so we have to make sure that we are having the best teachers, the best staff, understanding what it means to be learning in a digital world and to instruct in a digital world. So we need to make sure we are, doing that, and that's going to be something we need to set forth. Expand the EAP. Well, we currently have EAP now, but as we move into this span of the pandemic, we are going to have to be more virtual and certainly have more hotline phone options. So that's what we'll be expanding to. Maybe aware of the CARES Act that was passed back in March that went into effect April 1st. It won't end until December 31st of 2020. So we'll still be in a mode of addressing staff concerns, employee concerns related to anything that the law allows or the allowable aspects of the law that we'll be dealing with. And we expect there may be over 400 employees that may take advantage of that. We've had about 40 do that so far of the ones that were physically working of our close to 800. So we anticipate there'll probably be about 400, if not more than that. A third of our staff have children, and so that's an estimate. So we think that, that may have a factor as well. So we have, whatever we're doing, we have to think about that. We have to think about those considerations when we look at what are we going to do as we return to school and what will it look like, and what can we do to make sure we have the most staff be able to return, so we don't create issues related to staff and their children. Conditions of employment may be different. We are working through, what positions may require PPE, wearing it all the time versus others that may not be all the time. So we'll work through those as we start up and have the guidance necessary to determine, what areas are we going to have that will need to wear PPE full time and what may be part time. Internet access may end up becoming a requirement for employment. And so it is important that we have staff that are able to communicate digitally. And so that will be important. That will help staff work remotely and other aspects that we will have to address. There was questions earlier about the hiring that's happened over the last few board meetings. Certainly, we are less than where we normally are at our 425, but we are approaching about 260 hires right now. We have frozen to some degree hiring district-wide, just to kind of see how things level out. But we anticipate we'll probably have about 300 employees that will end up in that virtual SOFI that we'll be doing, where we have our new orientation to incoming educators that will occur. So we expect that to happen. As we do that, we have to make sure that we have looked at our workspaces, and we will, have each principals and staff and operations working to make sure we have environments where we have employees that can return and be in safe distance from each other. And we may have flexible work hours that we also are entertaining depending on what the situation on the job may be. We have tried to be proactive, and we made sure we've ordered. We have about over 40 handheld risk thermometers currently in the district, and we will be purchasing about 400 more for our schools, along with the consideration of 200 kiosks, if not more than that, for employee monitoring and check-in, which are more automated than the handheld, which requires a person to actually be there and do the screening check. And that completes my report, and I will release the screen for any questions.
Before I call on the board for questions, I have one of my own. Mr. Ray, maybe the superintendent is a better one to do this. Since virtual learning will become increasingly important for us as teachers, are we already working with Southern and other area universities in Savannah State to perhaps change curriculum so that student teachers are learning more virtual learning strategies?
You're breaking up a little bit, Dr. Buck, but I think where we are with Georgia Southern and other universities, they went into a full virtual mode, and so as far as what the student teachers are being able to do to student teaching did not occur this semester. And so I think that Georgia Southern and the other universities are planning on doing that and understanding that they have to prepare their teachers to be in a virtual environment. So I think that is the next step that we will have. We haven't had much communication with Georgia Southern, other than we do have a couple of projects that we're doing working with them, but they were pretty much shut down as far as what we were normally interaction with them. But we certainly will work on those great questions that you asked.
That just sounds like another, actually, I'm Dr. Haskell.
Thank you. I know you covered it some, but could you just give us again, the cliff notes or bulleted issues with the CARES Act or the dominant issues that we're having to address, like the one or two main points that we need to remember and the public should know about how the CARES Act is affecting our approach in the fall?
Yes, if you're asking about, I can provide that to the board, but just as a summary, briefly, one of the main things, it just allows employees to take 80 hours of leave if they are themselves in a situation where they have to be out because they've been identified as COVID. It also allows for, if it's a parent, we have a staff member that has children and the children can't be in school because school is closed, then they're able to take leave based on that as well. Now, the latter is only 2/3 of pay. However, as a district, we will match that 1/3 if they have available leave that they can use to match the 1/3 to make it a whole. But from a federal standpoint of the CARES Act, it only pays 2/3. But certainly if staff have leave, they can use the 1/3 to match that to have a whole.
Okay, thank you. So what I'm hearing in that is that unlike regular sick leave, where if I feel unwell, I know I'm unwell, and I call in sick, and a substitute or something, will come in to take care of my duties. Related to COVID, if you are at risk or perceived, basically it's not just the development of a symptom, it is the development of a situation that would have you activate your leave.
Yes, it could be. You're absolutely right, that Oscar Brown. It could be that you have you're a caregiver, and so you're concerned about the person that's at home that you're taking care of. So yes, there are many different scenarios. It also could be that under normal leave, we don't want employees to come to work sick. So certainly there's going to be more usage of sick leave, and we have to accept that as a district, because if an employee's not feeling well, we'll have an expectation that employees are checking themselves before they come into work. And if they're not feeling well, we have an expectation that they won't come into work, ill. So that's kind of a higher standard, and certainly something that's going to increase with our number of people that are using sick leave, because we'll have an higher expectation that staff are not coming to work sick.
So we have to elevate. So we already have shortages in some areas. We have to elevate our preparedness for shortages in anticipation of what that's going to look like for our staff, for them to be safe and for us to be safe.
That is absolutely correct. Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that's what I was getting. I wanted to make sure that's what you were getting.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have Dr. Howard Hall, then Ms. Hall.
Yes, I'm sure that you are inundated with phone calls and everything during this time in your department. Could you just amplify a little more on reopening for the staff that have high-risk categories from complications of COVID-19, such as crossing guards to administrators and people that work in the central office?
Yes, as our normal process, we have a process for accommodations. And so we will have a process that will be outlined as far as for employees to be able to say, I'm not able to come to work, here's the reason why. And we will go through that interactive process to see if we're able to accommodate that employee to not come to work. It's not something we'll be able to do 100% of the time. I don't want to make that clear, but it is something that we do on a regular basis, to do a one-on-one to see what is that employee's issue, and will they be able to work. It may be short-term, it may be long-term, but we have to look at that on an individual basis to see what it is that is their concern about them returning to work.
Ms. Hall?
Mr. Ray, I guess this means that we'll also have to look at e-learning substitute teachers for the academy. So those would have to be, I guess, a special cohort of substitute teachers who are able to perform the skills that our regular e-learning teachers would be doing.
And that is correct. We've actually looked at that already and communicated with our vendor, ESS. about a process of identifying those substitutes that are able to do it. Because you're right, if a substitute is not able to do it or doesn't have internet access at home or many different, it's just totally different. So the virtual school will have to have staff that substitutes that are identified with being able to substitute in the virtual environment. And so, yes, that will be something that we'll be identifying.
Okay, and my other question, in terms of the temperature monitors, that would be something campus police will handle so that anybody coming into the school, from students to teachers to parents, campus police would be there to do that forehead monitoring?
We're working with campus police now to come up with what the standard on that, because I think as you're thinking about the SSO being the first one that's there, that is possible, but there may be other situations that we're creating outside of the school, and Chief Enoch may talk about that. You may hear him talk about that before. He's already mentioned it, but certainly we'll come up with different options on doing that. But I would think you're right. What you typically think about entering the school, you see the SSO. So I would think that, yes, that's probably the first line of the person that would, be able to check the temperature, but that may not be the same in all situations. We'll have situations where students are coming in multiple doors. And so we will have staff that will be doing that as well, or students coming on the bus. There are many other areas where we need to get on the student side of it, have staff interacting too, not just the public coming in typically from the front door where you're seeing the SSO. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions of board members? Dr. Howard Hall.
I know we're collaborating with CDC and our local health department and our other local governments. Is the school calendar still on as is, or are we still waiting to see what happens with the data as it continues to come in?
School calendar currently has not changed. Certainly, as you know, the state of emergency was extended by the governor, I think, to July 12th. So we still have, we don't know whether there's going to be a restart restriction yet on time. But as of right now, we are planning to restart as we were originally. We haven't made a decision to change that at this point in time.
Any final questions before we move to our last presentation? Thank you, Mr. Ray. The last presentation is, I believe, Ms. Jennings on Public Affairs Communications.
Thank you, sir. Kurt Hediger here. Going to give a quick little introduction for our communications update that we'd like to bring to the board as one of our indicators in our operational components that we are working through. We do have a number of elements that we're looking to talk through today, and I'm trying to get my share screen going here, but I think I have too many windows that are currently open, so I'm going to find my presentation if you'll just bear with me for one quick moment. But one of the things that we have noticed is that the great work in this pandemic, if you will, that has, we often say that through chaos comes the benefit of opportunity. We have had the opportunity to, in fact, create new partnerships, grow the work that we've been doing, and create a greater understanding of what we are trying to accomplish. I don't have one where the share screen is. So we're going to talk through today with communications. We did have our presentation that we wanted to share, but unfortunately I'm not seeing it come up. There it is. There we go. So I've found that you should now see the full screen of the communication slide that we were trying to get to. But again, as I was indicating, we've had a great opportunity to really grow in much of our platforms in the world of communications. We've got an extensive need for quality communications that are in front of our messaging to get out to the parents and the community at large, and do it in a multiple ways through many platforms. We're glad that those platforms and the new partnerships that I was speaking to earlier specifically, we're excited about what we've done with Comcast and SCC PSS TV. And of course, we've worked to stay out, as I was indicating, in front of messaging and share as much as we can. We recognize in much of what you've heard already that through other departments, whether it's communicating to staff, directly to parents, or the community at large with the work that we're doing, that the communications plan is forefront. It's hand in hand with the operations that are going on throughout the district. And then it's sharing that key information that folks need to know in a way that is easily understood. I am proud that we have had extensive social media reach. We've hit many milestones, and we've grown and had some real areas of celebration in that realm. We've seen a lot of community engagement and support come through in the communication pieces that we're putting out. We've been featured in industry publications. Our superintendent has been featured nationally in industry publications and sharing news of what's going on with the school district. And we've been highlighted in national media outlets. In fact, Time Magazine even mentioned Savannah Chatham Public Schools in Time Online. So a lot of work. We've been running very fast, moving since that March 13th press conference before spring break occurred, and it seems the world changed for us, and we continue to push out quality communication. I would like to thank our communications team. Of course, we spoke a little earlier about some of the work that we've done in the technology drive. Mr. Clyde Newton has been working at the forefront of that. We're happy that the monies raised are over $100,000 now from community support for Chromebooks. Of course, in the communications team, our Brittany Odom, Ms. Sheila Blanco, and Todd Hagan have been instrumental in much of the productions that we've been doing, and the virtual graduation ceremonies, and the online components that we've done, and even the work that we're doing now through streaming these broadcasts live with our video conferencing with board meetings is coming through much of the work with our communications team. So to tell you a little bit more about some of those highlights and our strategies, I'm going to turn it over now to Ms. Stacy Jennings, of course, who is our communications director, who's going to talk to you more about some of our work and our growth.
Thanks, Kurt. I appreciate the intro and appreciate the opportunity to tell you about some of our successes in the small but mighty communications department, as Dr. Levette put us. We have enjoyed the ability to share our stellar teaching and educational staff on Channel 125 on Comcast. You'll see there some of the metrics that we've achieved through the Comcast channel. Lots of lessons recorded, lots of them airing on Comcast, all through the production capabilities that we've been able to leverage here at the Whitney Broadcasting Center. We are in discussions with Comcast about the future of the channel and how we can make sure that it continues to produce for us. They donated this time to us, that channel to us, through June the 30th. So we're talking with them about how best to proceed. All of those lessons that were recorded at the Whitney Broadcasting Center have been uploaded to YouTube. And in conjunction with our virtual graduations, we've seen our YouTube subscribers grow 675%. You heard that right. We started out with 211 subscribers. And since the 1st of May, it has grown 675% to 1,620 subscribers. Virtual graduations account for a lot of the views that we've achieved over the last 30 days. Views are up over 999%. Yes, you heard that right, over 999%. Virtual graduations accounting for about 25,000 of those views. Also, our teacher lessons have been uploaded to Comcast so that our watch time is up 764% for over 1,200 hours. We've implemented a couple of new tools to tell our story, both internally and externally. You probably all see our In Case You Missed It newsletter, which goes to a list that has grown to over 400 key community leaders. And our media roundup, which is an internal wrap-up of news and other items that allows our story to be told for inside folks who really may not hear about our story sometimes. Next slide. I was really pleased to have the help of Chief Enoch and Clyde Newton arranging some relationships with Lamar and Renfro, who donated over $6,000 worth of billboard space to us during the last part of May to recognize our graduating seniors. Here you see a couple of the billboards that ran, and I just happened to see one on Saturday as I was coming through Abercorn Street. So we know that we were getting some recognition for our seniors. We appreciate their support and their help in getting that recognition for our kids. Kurt mentioned our social media growth, and we're really excited to talk about the growth of our Facebook followers. We have grown to over 12,000 followers on Facebook. That's up from 8,000 on March the 1st. That's organic growth. That's no paid ads. It's mostly through video content. As you can see, we had the really outstanding Jenkins Curbside Facebook Live video hit the 1.3 million views mark. That's 1.3 million. You usually see the views on Facebook videos in the thousands. We don't know why this one took off, but we're really pleased it did. It's currently reached over 2 million impressions. We're thrilled with that response. Our Twitter followers continue to grow. We're up 34% more tweets and 15% more impressions. And our number of followers is growing by about 24% over the past 24 days. Kurt mentioned our critical messaging that really began on the 13th with our press conference and allowed us to stay in front of the needs of our target audience. We continued to press the school closure notices and the meal plans and all of the instructional learning information to our parents and to the community who also had an interest. Our biggest effort was on curbside graduations and virtual graduations. Those were really important and got us a lot of positive attention from the community. We continued to push to the end of the year. I think most of our communications there were pretty well received, and we have done an end of the year survey, which will be used to help us make decisions in our future efforts. As Kurt mentioned, we are working in tandem with the operations plan to make sure that we are supporting those elements.
And one thing that we have to take into great consideration is where now school is out, we're into the summertime, and we recognize that there's a sense out there of deep interest, as we all have, for what's next. So what we are doing internally, of course, is, and you're getting a sense of this through these presentations that you've seen, of all of the considerations that we have in an agency of our size, frankly, with any school district that's managing the safety of students and staff alike, in how we're going to reopen. So again, at the forefront and hand in hand, right, with the operations that we're doing, is that messaging and how we're getting the word out to our public, our stakeholders, our families, and our staff as well. So Ms. Jennings is going to continue the presentation very quickly as we wrap up to talk to you about some of our focus areas as we move forward.
Thanks. As you all know, we all receive calls on a regular basis asking about reopening schedules. How are kids going to go back to school? How are you going to feed them? How are we going to have athletics? So you'll see all of the things that we know that parents will be looking for, and we'll begin to roll the communication strategy out in tandem with our operations plan and working through to share that information with our stakeholders and our parents. New protocols will need to be developed for our access points. That includes entry screening requirements. I've heard that mentioned a couple of times. Signage for schools that instructs visitors and volunteers on how to proceed. We are working to develop some protocols for notifying volunteers and business partners as well as nonprofit partners such as the Deep Center, the JA, the YMCA. Our business partners, as you know, are very instrumental in bringing things to our schools. So we want to make sure that we communicate with them about the best way to proceed in the future. As far as the e-learning academy is concerned, we're going to be looking at, of course, mindful of the vision and mission of the operation. We're currently developing graphic representations in logos and looking at our print materials and our digital presentation, what will be required for that. We'll be looking at making sure that our key content is matched up to our vision, our mission. We expect rollout dates sometime in the first week of July, knowing that the registration begins on July the 1st. The platforms that we'll be using will be our typical traditional strategies of print, television, radio, video. We're relying a lot on video these days, as you heard about the Whitney Broadcasting Center. We may look for some billboards as well, if we can afford those. Certainly our social media channels are very popular, and we continue to get a great deal of traction there. But the most important thing that we do is communicate directly through our call outs and emails with our parents and staff. So we'll continue to use those. Some strategies will be simply press, others will be maybe paid media. We do our education update. Kurt and I have been talking about how we do that for the spring and for the fall as kids come back to school. We want to make sure that we are providing this information that gives our parents the opportunity to make good decisions about their kids and their school. Do you have any questions?
Questions of Ms. Jennings? I can't see the screen yet, so I can't call on anybody. Thank you. Dr. Howard Hall?
Yes, have we considered options for open house? Will it be both online, in person, or have we considered open house strategies for the school year start?
Yeah, I mean, that's a functional capacity that we will definitely need to walk through. We've had some internal discussions about creative ways that you could do an open house if we're in a situation where school opens and we're primarily in an online capacity or a combination thereof. We've seen some work in the community, such as what realtors have done, doing a 360 home type tour. And are there creative ways that you could do an open house to show parents their classroom, their child's classroom, talk about schedules and things like that. But that's an operational component that's on our area of focus for school opening. And when those details are finalized, that'll be certainly part of our messaging as well.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? I hear no other questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Hediger and Ms. Jennings. This completes our agenda for the informal meeting this morning. I would like to ask for a motion to go into executive session, which will begin at 1 o'clock. We'll take a 30-minute break or so. Ms. Hines has her hand up to make the motion. Ms. Hall seconds. All in favor of going into executive session, raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Mr. Catchmore?
Aye, sorry.
That's all right. Motion passes 9-0-0. We will begin executive session at 1 o'clock for the U board members. Let's just take a few minutes and take a break. Thank you. Let me call this meeting of the Savannah Chatham Board of Public Education to order at 2 o'clock on June 3rd, 2020. I am announcing that this meeting is being live streamed on the district website at www.sccpss.com. And I am asking Ms. Davis Brown, our secretary, if this meeting has been posted in accordance with all the laws regarding public meetings.
Yes, sir.
She assures me that it has. The proper notice has been given. A copy of the agenda is posted here at this building at the central office on board docs and can also be found at www.sccpss.com. As we continue this meeting, I would say that we're observing all the requirements of COVID-19. Members of the board are situated around the county at their homes and other places. I am at Whitney with the board secretary. The superintendent is in another room in this building, but we are all situated and ready to start the meeting. As we do that, I would also like to just briefly say that our country is in the midst of yet another crisis. This board consists of 9 people that are elected across the county, that each of us reflect our own broad cross-section of diverse experiences. And we are aware of our responsibilities to our students, our staff, and the larger community. We condemn violence and racism, and we commit ourselves to making certain that our schools are a safe place for all. We also commit ourselves
to guarantee that our schools continue to be a marketplace for ideas and viewpoints that are different, that can be heard by everyone and acted on for the good of society. We will continue to work as a board to ensure that our learning facilities are open for conversations and experiences that include all of our students and staff. Education should be the great liberator for all. Savannah Chatham Public Schools have a unique history, and our schools encompass students and staff from across the world who bring viewpoints that enrich us all. The superintendent and the board promise to work even harder to have education unleash the potential for every one of our 36,000 students. Thank you. As I've called the meeting to order, I would like to ask for a motion to approve our agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda with the following modifications. The amended agenda, which is item 3.01, new items, which are 3.02, 8.01, 8.04, and 8.05.
You've heard that motion as a second, Ms. Hines. All in favor of approving the agenda, raise your hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Katzmar, aye.
8, 9. I guess it's 9. I must have missed myself. The agenda approval is 900. As we have approved the agenda, would you now stand with me where you are as we pledge allegiance? Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The secretary tells me that she added that. Yes. Yes. I'm sorry. We're having a little miscommunication here. Announcements. Just 1 second, please. I have no announcements to make except that if you will check online, we will be having public hearings about setting millage rate, which we will vote on today. If you are a citizen and wish to speak to those hearings will be held here at Whitney. I will be here, and you will be able to come in the back door and speak, and then leave, and one at a time, thereby abiding by all of the social distancing regulations. But those hearings will be posted on our webpage and scheduled. The only other announcement I have is that it is customary that we post the names of those employees and former employees and students who may have passed away during the last few weeks. The person today, there's only one, Ms. Judy Schnecksnyder. She was the administrative secretary for campus police. Her date of death was May 8th, 2020. Many of the people will remember the fact that she ran the district United Way campaign for many years and was instrumental in the school district raising lots and lots of money for United Way. So if you would, please just take a few moments and reflect. Thank you. My pleasure now to call on our superintendent, Dr. Ann Levette, for her report.
Thank you, Dr. Buck, officers and members of the board. I am going to attempt to share my screen with you as I prepare to present this afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to serve and wish to share with you an operational update since we last met. Just to give you a final look at the number of meals that we served, a very critical service for our community. We started again on March 23rd. We made our last delivery on May 12th. And of course, with school ending on May 15th, we served a total of 730,098 meals across that time period. And I'm very pleased to say that we had many members of our community, including students, who offered a special thank you for us. And you see a special thank you there by one of our young scholars who offered a special way of saying thanks to all of us for our service. I want to offer a special thank you to our school nutrition and transportation workers, as well as campus police, for making sure that that service was available for all of our county. Of course, we had a delightful time, even though it wasn't exactly as we wanted it to be in offering our graduations. It was so seamless until several people thought it was all happening in a pre-recorded fashion. As you see, we turned the Whitney Center into the Whitney Broadcast Center, and we actually had live presentations as well as pre-recorded parts of the programs. Thank you, board members, for being actively involved in these ceremonies, and I think they've gone over pretty well. Even with some of the small technical difficulties, we were able to solve those pretty quickly. I want to offer a special thanks to the communications team, to Dr. Buck, and the principals for coming out and making this a special experience for our students. 11 schools over 3 days, and they've also been celebrated across the nation. We have gotten lots of requests for what was the recipe, how do we do it, and we've been very happy to share that. We even had Mrs. Ball Oliver participate in a national conference last week where she talked about how we chose to celebrate our graduates.
You all done with that?
This is an area that continues to generate questions because we are in a state of emergency and the schools are closed. We are continuing to try to control the access to the buildings. You heard us talk about facility access plans. We have completed phase 1, where we had an opportunity to host our graduating seniors and students who are not returning to the district. They had the opportunity to return the textbooks, technology, uniforms, band uniforms, ROTC, any kind of equipment that belonged to the district. They had the opportunity to come into the schools and to do that. Also, for retiring staff and those not returning to the school district, they had an opportunity to come in and retrieve personal belongings in their own time. We have had parents who are moving away from the city to come in at various times to collect their belongings as well. We will have controlled access, again, for those persons who are moving from one building to another, including 5th grade and 8th grade students, before the start of the school year. We will also continue to make accommodations on a case-by-case basis. If there is a situation that warrants us to have staff persons to access the building, then we are happy to arrange that. Our challenge is that the buildings are closed, and we have tried to maintain a safe environment for those persons who are working in the buildings. They have requested that we do that, and we have tried to do so. If there is a need for someone to retrieve something that they absolutely cannot live without, please contact us so that we can make arrangements for you to access the building. Other than that, we will announce the dates for students who are in the 5th and 8th grade and those teachers and staff moving to another building within the district. We will arrange for you to pick up your items on specific dates. So I do hope that that's helpful information for those who continue to have those questions. We are very grateful also for the community support that we've received in that, as you heard in our earlier session this morning, we have, through the support of community partners and individuals, raised, as of today, $114,050 for purchases of Chromebooks. We have quite another list of individuals and companies who are willing to help us in that effort. We want to thank all of them. I do believe you received a listing of the persons and companies who've contributed. As well, they are listed on our website. You'll also note on the website that we have a portal through which one may make a donation, and we invite those who are listening to use that portal as well. I also want to emphasize our cross-agency collaboration. We continue to offer our sites for pop-up COVID-19 testing. In fact, as we are speaking, we're also hosting today COVID-19 testing at Central Office through our partnership with Curtis V. Cooper. And our use of sites out in the community are also, those sites are being sponsored by the health department. So I want to make sure that we offer a special thank you to those agencies that have supported us and that we also continue to collaborate with. Looking ahead, I want to thank you for, again, this morning, listening to the operational considerations that we are working with to plan for the fall. You will recall receiving information last week, and it has been highly publicized, that Georgia High School Association has introduced the idea of summer conditioning. We have created a plan that allows us to do so with safety as our first priority. We will announce the dates that summer conditioning will begin in Savannah, Chatham County Public Schools. The announced date by Georgia High School is June 8th. We will not begin on June 8th. We will begin June 15th or later, and we will advise all parties involved of the requirements and the conditions of participating in the voluntary summer conditioning program. We want to offer a special thank you to the PTA for sharing the results of the survey that they conducted. We have also conducted our own survey. You will see that we had nearly 6,500 participants in that survey experience. And we also had the opportunity to hear from students as well as employees. We asked them to give us some feedback on the very abrupt change to remote learning, and they were very happy to do so. Many of the comments that they offered will help us to plan for the fall. You'll also note that we have received and shared with you the guidelines that have been recently issued by the Georgia State Department of Education. We are referring to that guidance as we continue to do the planning for the fall as well. Looking ahead, we are continuing, as you heard earlier this morning, our work to ensure that we are following the guidelines which indeed honor public health. We'll be continue to work with our Department of Public Health as we put those guidelines in place, and they allow us to use the science to plan for the fall. We are reviewing those guidelines as they've been provided to us, and we're doing that in consultation with the local health departments. Hopefully, through this work, we will be able to finally choose the methods or the options that we'll be putting in place for fall reopening. This gives me an opportunity to reiterate some of the things that have been pointed out earlier. Fiscal concerns. We're continuing to do work on the fiscal 21 year budget. As you know, generally by this time, the legislative session is over, and we can look forward to getting information on our allocations coming from the state. The General Assembly will not come back together until June 15th. So we're in a position where we will need to issue a spending resolution, which is not uncommon and will be used all across the state, because we do not yet have the information from the State Department or from the state in regard to the funds that we'll receive. What makes this challenging is that we have had to offer a millage rate adoption advertisement, which is always very difficult for people to understand. That even though we must advertise it using specific language, which says, a tax increase, there is no plan at this time to request a millage rate increase, but we must advertise it as so unless we're reducing the millage rate. So you will see those advertisements out there. We will continue to, as a staff, try to make that plain for everyone. We've had lots of conversations and correspondence with people like, can you change the language? Well, we don't really have that luxury, but we will try to make it clear to everyone that it is not our intention at this point to request a millage rate. We are, however, keenly aware that the 14% budget cut proposed will require, as we stated during the last several meetings, will require some adjustments on our part. We are maintaining the budget calendar, so you will see some action today in that regard. As we look at the 14% cut, it probably translates to a shortfall of $3.8 billion across the fiscal years, across this fiscal year and next. So we're maintaining for the state in terms of our dollars. So we are maintaining a close watch on what happens during the legislative session. I think it goes without saying that the pandemic has created additional cost for us locally. They will continue probably to create additional cost as we go forward. We have been able to engage in writing, certainly because we're not able to see people in public through meetings. We have engaged by making sure that people know we are thinking about all the options available to us. We've been collaborating with other organizations, but most importantly, we've tried to use every vehicle we can to share that we are looking at options for next year. And we're asking everyone to unpack their patience, because we will need to adapt. We will not be able to have school as we experienced it on March the 10th or 11th or 12th, but we will do as much as we can to approach a developmentally appropriate environment for our children. So please know that that's the premise, certainly with safety as the guiding principle. We have created a reopening task force. I'm really happy to share that we have a pretty diverse group. It includes representatives from public transportation, emergency professionals, PTA, behavioral health, military, finance, teachers, students, support staff, administrators, community members, faith-based representatives, public health, and of course, private health officials, school personnel, even one of our former teachers who is now living in China will be a part of this process because she is living through the reopenings in her area in China. CETA, juvenile court, a pretty wide-ranging group of individuals will be meeting in June and early July. They will be looking at 10 functional areas, and they will be offering some suggestions and feedback on the various models that we can possibly use for the fall. The district reopening will also be, we are at this point developing surveys for staff and parents regarding their plans for the fall. We want to have some idea about what people are comfortable with. And we want to take that in consideration as we start to do more deep planning. I want to take just a minute to reinforce what Dr. Buck said earlier. Collectively, we are facing the emotional, mental, physical, and economic hardships of COVID-19, while we're also trying to process the events of the past week and weekend that have been very difficult to ignore. It has been difficult to process the media portrayals of these realities. We've received a number of emails and messages from parents and students who are concerned about their safety. Our youth are brilliant, they're curious, they're passionate, and we saw many of them out this weekend participating in the protest. To help them, our parents and our teachers create opportunities and safe spaces to share the concerns, I have asked that we accelerate the creation of a special page of resources that deal with very difficult topics, places where people can go to get information on social justice, institutionalized racism, nonviolent and violent protest, and other ways that our young people, our citizens, our parents, and staff can be a part of a solution. So you will see while we have in our COVID-19 and our various school sites, resources that people can use for dealing with the concerns that they've had around COVID-19. We're now adding a specific page that allows young people and families and the general public to seek resources that they may find helpful in processing all of the challenges that come with the most recent public events. We appreciate the opportunity to serve the public. It's a very difficult time, but it is not a time that we can't survive. It will require changes. It will require, this time will require some different kinds of thinking, patience, and compassion. So I ask everyone to unpack that, be respectful and kind, and I think we'll be able to make a difference. Thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you, Dr. Levette, and thank you very, very much to you and your staff for the continued hard work of trying to grasp this, as you say, opportunity from chaos and help us to serve our students as we should. We appreciate what you're doing for us. Moving on, I have no appearances, requests for appearances before the board. Moving on to Board of Education matters. First item, which will be read by Mr. Hediger, has to do with a relaxation of policy JCDB.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. Yes, we have a recommendation for relaxation of certain aspects of policy. This is relaxation of policy JCDB, student dress code for non-uniform day option. Due to the extraordinary circumstances faced by our community and our nation as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the anticipated uncertainties surrounding conditions during reopening, and the economic impact suffered, the board may relax certain aspects of official policy to assist families in the transition back to school when regular operations resume. Policy JCDB, student dress code, remains with no recommended changes. However, during the 2020-2021 school year, any parent or guardian whose child, for whatever reason, is not able to adhere to the clothing requirements of the school uniform policy may defer to the dress code for non-uniform days. This temporary relaxation of policy shall apply only to the 2020-2021 school year and shall be applicable for those who are not able to meet the requirements of the student dress code. Students must be dressed to meet the acceptable dress for non-uniform days in a manner that is consistent with JCDB-R1 student dress code. This policy action has been reviewed by the superintendent and board attorney and is now being presented for consideration. Thus, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board approve the relaxation of policy JCDB student dress code to allow families the option to follow the student dress code requirements when necessary for non-uniform school days during the 2020-2021 school year.
You've heard the resolution. Is there a motion to that effect? Dr. Brinkman, you make the motion. Dr. Hoskins-Brown seconds. Dr. Brinkman, discussion, please.
Thank you, district, for getting this done in a super fast turnaround. Thank you, constituents, for contacting me, expressing concerns with acquisition and cost of uniforms. And thank you to the constituents that have contacted me that still want their children to wear uniforms. I think the way that this is written clearly states your children can still wear their uniforms, but for individuals that cannot make the necessary purchases, their children can come to school abiding by non-uniform days. So thank you to everyone around.
Thank you, Dr. Brinkman. Dr. Hoskins-Brown, and then Ms. Wade.
I echo Dr. Brinkman, and just the way that the policy is written is really helpful for parents, not just who cannot buy uniforms, but who may just choose at this time to make the reconnection to the school environment a little easier for their young people by choosing to align with the non-uniform day. So I think that this policy has the greatest flexibility that allows families to make decisions in their homes and still be able to comply with the district expectations. So I appreciate the feedback that we've gotten and the listening ear that the superintendent and her staff applied to relaxing the enforcement of this policy.
Thank you, Dr. Hoskins-Brown. Ms. Wade, please.
Anyway, can everyone hear me now?
Yeah.
Thank you. So I've heard from a lot of people about this as well, and it's kind of funny in a time of crisis to hear so much about the uniform policy. Sometimes I think we're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And most people I've heard from want to keep the uniforms. 2 years ago, I bought my son 5 tops and 5 shorts, and he's worn those every day for the past 2 years. It's clearly the best investment and the cheapest per day wearing of clothes ever in my house. On Target, white polos are available for $4. So while I recognize these are very, very trying financial times for everyone throughout the economy, I don't think eliminating school uniforms, which effectively this does, is the answer to that. Most schools have pretty robust uniform closets. A lot of PTAs will organize sales. And I think effectively this eliminates the dress code policy. And eliminating that, I think, really brings some challenges to principals to have to administer now children not wearing uniforms. I think it deteriorates school pride. We all know when we see a yellow shirt, they're an A.B. Williams kid. When we see a Garrison Gator and they're green,
And so I think this is unnecessary and it's trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And so I am not in support of it. The reality is, if you have a middle school or a high school or even a higher age elementary school kid, they're going to wear what they want, even though this says when necessary. I don't know how we regulate if it's when necessary. So I think we're either uniforms or not uniforms. And I'm don't think this is going to work out really well. And I think, frankly, this undoes our uniform policy going forward. And I don't think it's in the best interest of the school district or our families.
Thank you, Ms. Hines, and then Dr. Howard Hall.
I differ just a little bit. Let us keep in mind also that you can hear me. Let's keep in mind also that right now some parents have no income, and they may not get any income. They may not have any income within the next few months. So for now, let us just kind of deal with this to give parents a chance to kind of get back on their feet. Some parents are really hurting as a result of COVID-19. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Dr. Howard Hall.
Okay, yes, I guess we're hearing different things in different sides of the district. In my district, the parents really are thankful. I know that we have this flexibility in this policy. The policy is clear, it's precise, and it gives both sides the option either to wear the uniforms or not. In many cases, the uniforms, some families, they have 2 sets of clothing. When they come home, they have to, take off the uniforms and put on another item of clothing to preserve the uniform. So I think it's fair across the board. It gives both sides the option. As I said, different areas of the district have different opinions. And as far as the opinions of many of the parents that I've heard from, they will be very appreciative that they have the flexibility to either wear the uniforms, purchase uniforms for their students, their child, or not. Thank you.
Any other comments from board members? Hearing none, you've heard the resolution. All in favor of the motion as it pertains to relaxation of the dress code for this coming year, raise your hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Catchmore, yes.
8. All opposed? 1. The motion passes 8-1. 8-1-0. Moving on to the next item, which is budget process update and calendar. Hey, Mr. Jackson.
This presentation will be provided by our finance team, Mr. Larry Jackson, Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you. Hey,
Good afternoon, everyone. We will have coming forward Paige Cooley, who is our budget director. So she should be starting the presentation at any moment now.
She's on there. I see her.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Cooley.
Okay. Were you able to see the screen? I thought I hit share, but maybe
No.
let me go back and there. Okay.
Yes. Now we can, Ms. Cooley.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to go through a brief presentation on our budget process and where we are right now. The areas that we are going to cover today will be the general fund revenue update, the budget process calendar, and considerations for school reopening and questions. A recap of what is going on with our general fund revenue. We have received our tax digest numbers, and we ended up growing more than projected. We originally projected a 3% growth, and when receiving the numbers from the assessor's office, there is actually a 5.49% digest increase, which is good news to us. Originally we had projected only about $318,000 increase because we had figured in 3% growth and a $4.5 million loss into that. But we now have changed that to a 5.49% growth with no loss in there. So we're projecting almost $11 million increase to the budget in the tax digest. We have also reduced revenues in our state on behalf payments by $750,000. Our other federal revenue decrease for the hurricane grant, which we did not receive this year or we will not receive next year, $112,000. And our GMA proceeds, which are from the bus leases, we are planning to pay cash for the buses this year so that we can save on the interest for that. I wanted to kind of point out the calendar. There are some updates to it since you previously received the handout for this, and I've had to go in and update some of the changes to our advertising dates. And so I kind of wanted to go over a few of these to make sure everyone's aware of them. On May 26th, we received the tax digest and the rollback millage rate from the Chatham County Board of Assessors. Yesterday, as I'm sure most of you saw, we advertised in the Savannah Morning News the millage rate hearing that's going to be held. The first two hearings will be held on June 10th, one at 11 o'clock and one at 6 o'clock. And then our third hearing is advertised to be held at 6 o'clock on June 17th. We also advertised our 5-year tax digest and proposed millage rate levy in the paper. Today on the calendar is our board meeting in which we're doing our tentative millage rate adoption and our spending resolution. I've mentioned the advertisements that will be going in. We'll also be advertising again about the millage rate hearings, which the advertisement will go in the Savannah Morning News next Tuesday, June 9th. And our last advertisement will be on June 25th, which will advertise our 5-year tax digest and proposed millage levy in the paper for where the Chatham County Board of Commissioners adopts that. And on this slide, we wanted to give you some areas of consideration that we are considering for reopening as far as finance is concerned. We're looking at a budget that provides for our health and safety measures, which are very costly. Funding for hygiene and sanitation, expanding vendors in order to operate safely. We're revising policies for emergency purposes. We're looking at shifting current staffing for a virtual school. We're taking into account increased costs for transportation and the food service. And we're funding for increased costs for all divisions due to COVID-19. Does anyone have any questions?
Questions of board members? I can't see the screen, the big screen with the board, so. Thank you. Ms. Wade?
So we've been hearing a lot, of course, about the 14% reduction by the state. And I'm just wondering, I don't really see that reflected in here. I know it's not final, but kind of what our plan is if that takes place. I'm assuming that's the worst case scenario, but I'd like to hear a little more about if that is the case, how we're doing that, particularly in light of anticipated increased expenses related to COVID.
Well, we have looked at that 14% decrease, which would be almost $23 million to our budget. Some of the federal stimulus money will help in that regard. And we have put together a list of all of areas of cuts in order to meet that 23 million just in the general fund. And we have not made decisions on the exact items that we're going to do, but we have come up with a list of items. I think we're going to share that at a future board. Is that correct, Larry?
That is correct.
And I would just say the sooner the better. What I certainly don't want is here's what we've decided. Thank you, board. I think that it's going to require some board input. And I think the sooner we can be a part of those discussions, the more productive it'll be and the better we can take that message to our constituents and also convey their thoughts and concerns about it as well. So I hope we can get that ASAP.
I have Ms. Hall.
Mr. Johnson was first.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson, I didn't.
It's okay. Thank you, Ms. Hall. Quick question. On everything that we've been given, we do not have the numbers for what the rollback rate would have been. We always see the current millage rate, so I haven't seen those numbers.
Yes, sir. I have those numbers. It would have been, if we did the rollback rate, it would be 18.808 mills. It is currently 18.881 mills. So as it is not even the rollback is not a very large one, as you can see, 18.8008 to 18.881.
Thank you, ma'am.
Only a 0.39% in percentage increase.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Hall?
I agree with Ms. Wade that as soon as we can possibly have more definite information, that would be very helpful. I had asked Mr. Jackson about our fund balance, and he told me that right now it's about at 62 million. By the end of the year, if things go well, he expects it to be at about 70.8. And I want that to be a part of the discussion. I sent all of you an email a few weeks ago to ask you to thoroughly think about this. And I'm stating again that I hope when we do have to decide on these cuts and things, that we can do as little harm to our community in terms of our employees as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Any other board members with questions? Or Dr. Howard Hall and Dr. Brinkman.
Yes, I'd just like to echo what Ms. Hall was saying and Ms. Wade as far as the budget is concerned. All of our employees are considered as essential employees. Everybody from classified to certified staff. So we just want to make sure that we do all that we possibly can to avoid cuts as far as the furloughs are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Howard Hall. Dr. Brinkman.
Yeah, moving forward in support of maintaining this millage rate, which will be an increase in $11 million, and hearing Ms. Hall quote our $60+ million fund balance, I would hope that by remaining at this millage rate and having that increased revenue, we could adopt a budget that doesn't affect employees' salaries, or is a very, very, very small portion of maybe the highest tiered salaries gets affected. I just feel like we're bringing in $11 million more dollars, and we've got a general fund that is healthy and getting more and more healthy. I would hate for us to pass a budget after increasing funding that decreases our employees' salaries.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Hopkins Brown, excuse me.
Thank you. I
I certainly, I'm looking forward to the information. I support the comments that I've heard. My question is that my impression of the cost of reopening is that it is close to the amount of this 11 million that we're talking about, and that it may even be greater because we don't have a full estimate of the cost of reopening. So am I overly connecting or extrapolating two different bits of financial information, or is that not the case?
Where we are at this moment, that's kind of the X factor. We were pretty close to balancing the budget, but that's a piece of the puzzle that we're trying to work on to put a dollar amount to it. We really, once we go through the task force meetings and we can get more information as far as what is it going to cost across each divisions to get through this school opening, then we will be able to bring back some numbers to adopt the budget. But right now, we really don't know what that cost is going to be, and that's the only part that we're really missing, other than the final state numbers.
Okay, but that's a big part. Knowing what additional CDC precautions are going to cost, that we can't negotiate the public health factor.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like the idea that Dr. Brinkman brought up of maybe looking at particular, I hate to say classes, but particular groups of employees that are less vulnerable to furlough or something like that.
Right.
But it's difficult for me to envision anything as protected right now, because I imagine the cost of reopening being so huge. And what I really want is to be wrong when those numbers come back.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Hall, Ms. Hall.
Thank you for letting me speak again. It's my feeling that we are not in any way in a bad position with our fiscal accountings, that we in fact are enjoying a very healthy fiscal, we have a very healthy fiscal outlook. $800,000, I think, was the number quoted that we were going to receive back from the White Bluff project, which of course I know would go back into the East Bluff side of things. But I'm hoping that all of the things that have to do with technology, that will be a big part of this change and reopening and the academy and all, that as much of that as possible, we can look on the other side of the house, on the East Bluff side, and not have to burden our general fund with those things that can actually be accomplished through our East Bluff dollars. So I do not expect for us to have to make any really drastic cuts, because like I said, from the last time we spoke with Mr. Jackson and Page at the small sessions, it seemed to me that we were in a very healthy state of affairs.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. I would just ask the board to remember that we are in much better shape for this year. Next year will be horrendous. There's no way the economy can recover fast enough, and we will just be coming off of these cuts. And what all of you say is exactly true for this year, but we must also look forward one more year, because that's going to be the year that's really the kicker, I think. So.
Well, Dr. Buck, can I just respond to that?
Sure.
Of course, a lot of this is so political. We have quite a, horrendous political season upon us right now. I'm still looking to see if the federal government plans to do anything to help all of our states with all of the money, the revenue that has been lost because of this virus. And hopefully next year may bring political changes that will change that forecast and will change that attitude. So I want us to stay hopeful and aspirational, but I do understand what you're saying.
Thank you, Ms. Al. Any other comments from board members? Any other questions of Mr. Jackson or Ms. Cooley? Hearing none, thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Jackson and Ms. Cooley.
Thank you.
Moving on to 8.03, which is a regulation presented to us strictly for information, has to do with professional personnel ethics. I'm not going to read that entire thing. I will only say, since it's presented for information, it does not need a vote. But are there any comments board members would like to make? Hearing none, we have a resolution for support of education. You remember that one of our neighboring counties had asked us to support a letter of concern about the cuts. We did indeed let them know we were going to do that, but we preferred to do it as a motion because we found out that the other group had not or did not intend to pass it on to anyone but their own elected officials in that county. And so we will consider this resolution and then send it on to the members of our delegation at the legislature. Mr. Hediger, you going to read for us?
Yes, sir. Continuing the spirit of critical fiscal matters, we have a resolution of support for education funding. The Board of Education for the City of Savannah and the County of Chatham recognizes the severe impact the COVID-19 pandemic has had on our nation's economy. As a governance body that represents an educational system that serves more than 37,000 students and employs almost 5,600 employees, we also recognize the vast importance of school systems in their local communities, having a significant impact on jobs, economic growth, and the future workforce. Whereas the impact of COVID-19 pandemic is far-reaching, and whereas we understand that some funding loss in education is inevitable, and whereas local education agencies have long felt the impact of state austerity reductions, and only recently, since the FY19 budget, have received full funding of state revenues used to support the 1.7 million children in Georgia's public schools, and whereas we join other school boards facing critical budget deficits, whereas we are concerned about the recommendation that school systems plan for a 14% reduction in state funding and the significant impact this will have on our schools. And whereas we recognize there must be adjustments made across the state to account for losses in tax revenue, whereas we believe that education should be one of the last cuts made, and whereas in order to prepare our students for an increasingly competitive, technology-driven global economy, Georgia must fund schools at a level sufficient to support student success. And whereas placing Georgia's children as a priority by limiting as much as reasonably possible losses in state education revenues will provide a generational impact that will boost future economies and enhance the workforce. And whereas the importance of maintaining strong public schools, particularly in times of crisis, is paramount. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Public Education for the City of Savannah and the County of Chatham does hereby adopt this resolution to urge the General Assembly to seek alternate scenarios for recouping lost revenues and to make budgetary decisions that will minimize the loss of funding for public school systems across the great state of Georgia.
You've heard the resolution. Is there a motion to that effect? Moved by Dr. Hoskins Brown. Second by Dr. Brinkman. Dr. Hoskins Brown, anything?
I think this accurately reflects the point of view that's been shared by the board members, and I appreciate that it's been developed and shared in this way.
Thank you. Dr. Brinkman? Dr. Hoskins, Dr. Howard Hall, you had your hand up. You okay? Any other comments from board members? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion passing, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Catchmar, yes.
9 for Mr. Catchmar. Motion passes 9-0-0. Thank you very much. Susie King Taylor Community School Resolution. I apologize for this coming to you so late. We were not aware until I think yesterday, a day before yesterday, that we as a board had to look at this. And so we do have Dr. Chatton on the line if there are questions. Are you reading the resolution, Mr. Hediger?
Yes, sir. Happy to handle that. We do have a board action item as required for providing documentation to the Georgia Department of Education for one of our charter schools seeking the use of a facility. It is a resolution to approve proposed grade 6 through 8 site for Susie King Taylor Community School, the site location at 3400 Florence Street in Savannah, zip code 31401. After having considered the findings from all studies completed and evaluating the potential sites available for this facility, the Savannah-Chatham County Board of Education requests approval of the proposed site identified on the Georgia Department of Education's Educational Facility Site Evaluation and Approval Form. This is for the site located at 3400 Florence Street in Savannah. This occurs by official board action here on Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020. An initial investigation has been completed. A Phase 1 environmental site assessment has been conducted, and a risk hazard analysis has been completed. Costs associated with the development of this site, including grading, obtaining utilities, and road improvements, have been evaluated. Thus, be it resolved, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, that the Board of Education approve the Susie King Taylor Community School proposed facility for grades 6 through 8, located at 3400 Florence Street in Savannah. Back to you, Mr. Board President. Dr. Buck, Board President, back to you. I'll defer to the Vice President of the Board, Dr. Dion Hoskins-Brown.
Is there a motion to accept the resolution? Moved by Ms. Hall and seconded by Dr. Brinkman. Is there any discussion?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Hearing none, all in favor of the resolution signify by raising your hand. Okay. And, or by phone, Mr. Kashmar?
Kashmar, yes.
Okay. And opposed, do the same. And abstentions. Okay. The motion carries 6-1-1. Wait. 6-1. And the motion is passed.
Sorry, I was a yes to that. I don't know how you counted me, but I was having to negotiate something with my daughter at the same time. I apologize.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so that's 7-1-0, and Dr. Buck was absent. Okay. Thank you. Are we adjusting the sound?
I can put audio on here and you can hear it.
All right. As we take care of our technical difficulties, we will move forward to the consent agenda. Is there a motion? Okay. Properly moved by Mr. Johnson, second by Mr. Hines to approve the consent agenda. All in favor signify by raising your hand. Okay, I'm Ms. Hines, you are muted.
Mrs. Hines, not Mr. Hines.
I said Ms. Hines, but okay. Ms. Hines. Okay, all in favor signify by raising your hand.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that the question I didn't realize that this was part of the consent agenda. So may I ask that question for discussion before we go into the vote?
Okay, yes, that would be discussion, certainly.
Okay. It's about the demolition of the Groves High School building. And I noted here that I don't know if it's purchasing that does the format, but we've always asked that we see the names and locations of the bidders for these different projects, and this one does not have any of that information. So I have some questions about complete demolition services, whether or not they're a local business in Chatham County, If they're not, is there something in their contract that says that they are to include Chatham County residents as part of the labor force for this job? So I don't want to ask that it be pulled, since that's my fault that I didn't realize it was in the consent agenda, but I would like those to discuss this if possible with anyone who's available, Ms. Miller-Kagler or Dr. Levette or someone who could answer that for me before we vote.
Certainly, Ms. Hall. Is that information available?
Yes, it is. This is Darrell Bozeman. Complete demolition is from Carrollton, Georgia. And so there's nothing in a provision in the contract that requires them to hire local people. But traditionally, what they've done on White Bluff, they hired Edie as a local trucking company because it was just practically impossible to bring trucks from Carrollton, Georgia. And so they do incorporate a lot of our folks here from the local community in doing this particular work. So they're from Carrollton, Georgia, but they do incorporate, like most of our contractors, the labor is cheaper if you get it at the site location. And so that's what most of our contractors do.
Okay.
But there's no provision because basically we hard bidded this. And basically when you do that, on this particular job here, we saved probably about $1 million in doing it. But again, all these contractors, when they hire their forces, they don't typically bring those forces from another city because it's cheaper to do that locally.
Okay, and I appreciate that, which means that because of that, then our local people get a chance at this. But we have discussed this over and over again, and that's why I'd like a listing of all of the bidders, where those bidders were from, so that we can see if there were bidders from the local area, how much more they bid that cost them this, that we had to go to Parish, Georgia, to get this location. We have East Plus 4 coming up. I want to be able to go out and say to the community, because of your support, we're able to build these schools, build this beautiful new Groves multiplex school, but we have to show the community that we are investing on their support and in turn making sure that most of these East Plus dollars stay local. So I'd like to say to the board at some point, we need to revisit this so that purchasing understands that that is our intent. If we don't have it in writing, we need to look perhaps to what the county or the city, what their documentations are, and try to make sure that that's understood when we give out, like this is almost a $500,000 contract. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, just as a point of order, I yield the floor back to the chair. The motion on the floor is approval of the consent agenda, and there are 2 requests to speak. The next in line to speak, Dr. Howard Hall, followed by Mrs. Hines.
Thank you.
Yes, based on the information that I get, there was a vast difference in the bidding. It was anywhere between $96,000 to $402,000. So I began to wonder, why was it such a big difference? And then I realized that some companies have their own equipment, others may rent their equipment, and others may subcontract. However, my question is, did we include everything that the qualifications asked for?
And see, Howard Hall, that's so good that you said that. We all need to see where these other companies are, what they were, and did the companies that are local overbid to the point that, they overbid themselves out of the thing? That's why it's helpful to see every company that had a bid and then the one that was accepted.
I would like for us to move on. This discussion can be taken care of out of this meeting, I would hope, even though it's on the consent agenda, because the information that Ms. Hall is asking for is more far-reaching than just this one bid. So if we could move on. Ms. Hines, are you
No,
speaking?
well, I was just going to ask, I thought we were carrying the motion for the 38th Street School on Florence Street. Did we finish that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So we're on the consent agenda approval. Is that correct, Dr. Hoskins Brown?
That is correct. The last, the action on the school King Taylor Charter carried 7-1-0.
Thank you, May. I apologize to the board. I had my computer plugged in and it was plugged into the wrong socket, so my battery went dead. I've been known to have a dead battery a lot of times. So anyway, we're voting on the consent agenda. All in favor of voting for the consent agenda, raise your hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Kaczmar abstains.
Motion passes 8-0 with 1 abstention. Moving on to goal 1, we have 8-0-1, 8-1.
As we close out the consent agenda to item 10.01, this is for the purchase of student devices under eSplost. In our work to move to a digital environment that fully supports a 1-to-1 student-to-technology ratio, we do have what is now a ratification for purchase of student devices. This is for RFP 18-06, Chrome device hardware, software, and installation under an annual contract that had previously been approved by the board. On April 11, 2018, the board approved the RFP 18-06 Chrome device hardware, software, and installation services under an annual contract to Array Jones Educational Solutions for a 3-year period with 2 additional 1-year renewals at an estimated first-year cost of $1,940,000, $1,940,069. This is pending final contract negotiations as approved by the superintendent. Due to the unforeseen aspects of the COVID-19 pandemic that has altered the normal operations of the district, the Division of Data and Accountability is now seeking approval to purchase 14,000 student Chrome devices under the awarded RFP 18-06. The devices will be used to support student device needs to move the district in the direction of a 1-to-1 student-to-technology ratio model. The student devices will be purchased with eSplost 3 funds in the amount of $3,284,260. Thus be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board now ratify the purchase of 14,000 student devices under RFP 18-06 Chrome device hardware, software, and installation services annual contract from Array Jones Educational Solutions in the amount of $3,284,260.
You've heard the resolution. Is there a motion to that effect? Moved by Mr. Johnson. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Hines. Mr. Johnson, anything?
Yeah, and I want to apologize for not asking this question earlier on. How close would we be to a 1-to-1 with this 14,000 purchase of the Chromebooks?
That's right.
This is Dave Feliciano, Chief Data and Accountability Officer. I would say we're pretty close in getting to a 1-to-1. One of the other pending orders that we're doing is for the iPad solutions for the K-2 grade levels, and also the MacBook Airs for Groves High School 9th grade students.
About a week and a half ago.
Thank you.
I think, Mr. Johnson, they had said that we, Madam Superintendent Mike, I think they had said we needed 20,000 devices to be to be 1-to-1. So that was.
I don't know if it's on the way.
Ms. Hines, please, anything?
We've already charged the credit card.
Any other board members?
It's under Susan Page Cooley, the credit card is.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing Ms. Cooley, please.
Yeah, we're going to mute Paige Cooley's microphone. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from board members? Resolution is buying 14,000
student devices. Who would have ever thought it? All in favor, raise your hand, please. 1, 2, 3,
Kaczmar, yes.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Motion passes 9-0-0. We've been talking about okay, moving on in goal 1, we have a budget amendment for Title I SIG digital learning.
Yes, sir. A budget amendment here. This is obviously under Goal 1 as it directly affects and impacts the student readiness for college and career ready. However, it is a finance action. That is why you see the division of ownership for the finance division. And of course, this is a competitive grant award that was won and awarded to the district. So now to get our finance accounts lined up, we are asking for a budget amendment. The Georgia Department of Education has awarded Chatham County $1,236,400 for the fiscal year 2020 Title I SIG Digital Learning Grant. The Division of Finance requests the board to approve the expenditures and revenue created for the new grant as shown on your agenda item. Receiving revenues of Title I revenue in the amount of $1,236,400 with a total will be moved to your expenditure lines to pay for professional services, supplies, software, expendable equipment, and expendable computer equipment. Thus, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board approve the expenditures and revenues created for the new Title I SIG digital grant in the amount of $1,236,400.
You've heard the resolution. Is Mr. Johnson makes the motion. Dr. Howard Howell seconds. Mr. Johnson?
I would just like to say I love seeing grant money coming our way.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Howard Howell?
Yes, since Title I is supplemental, what impact would this have on us reaching our one-to-one initiative?
Anyone want to try to answer that?
This is Dr. Garcia Wilder. We would use these devices to purchase devices for the schools that are part of the grant. So that would also contribute to the one-to-one for those schools where they have allocated part of the grant to purchase additional digital devices.
Dr. Hoskins Brown?
So I think we keep getting back to the number of how many devices we need for everyone to have a device. Somehow in my head, I had that as being roughly 7,000 additional devices. Did I make that number up or did I hear it somewhere? How close is that being?
7,000 was reported early on when we had done a distribution of devices to students as the closure of the schools was continuing. So you may have heard it there, but what we have reported in supplemental for that and ongoing for sustainability is really 20,000 devices across the district. Of course, today with your action, the 14,000 is a big move forward in that. There's still a mix, though, of devices because the ones that we've seen most effective right now is the use of the Chromebook. However, for younger students, the Chromebooks can be a little bit challenging. So our educational folks can tell you a little bit about how more functional, say, an iPad or a learning tablet works. So that's part of that mix as well.
So we're back at about 7 again. After we needed 20, we just bought 14. We're kind of back, but it's going to be a mix of different technologies.
Correct, and I'll defer that to Mr. Feliciano on the technology side.
Yes, this is David Feliciano, Chief Data and Accountability Officer. Just to let you know, we still have portable devices located at the schools. So we did not empty out all the schools in March after spring break. So we still have in reserve portable devices that can still be deployed. So those are also taking into account when we're looking at providing a one-to-one solution across Chatham County.
Thank you. Any other comments from board members? Hearing the resolution about Title I digital learning, all in favor, raise your hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Kaczmar, yes.
9. Motion passes 9-0-0.
The last item under Goal 1 is budget ratification for Title I carry forward.
Thank you, sir. Yes, once again, these monies do have great impact on our work to ensure all students are college and career ready. So you see it under Goal 1. However, this is a finance activity asking for a budget ratification to Title I grant, Fund 470-866. The Georgia Department of Education has awarded Chatham County an additional $1,808,782 for fiscal year 2020 Title I grant. The Division of Finance requests board approval for the additional expenditures and revenues as shown on your agenda item. Revenue totaling for Title I revenue, $1,808,782 to pay for various expenditures, including salaries, benefits, professional services, travel registration, supplies, software, non-capitalized equipment and computers, books, capitalized equipment, and indirect costs. Thus be it resolved upon recommendation of the superintendent that the board approve the additional expenditures and revenues for the Title I grant in the amount of $1,808,782.
You've heard the resolution. Is there a motion to that effect? Moved by Ms. Hall, second by Dr. Howard Hall. Ms. Hall?
Nothing.
Dr. Howard Hall?
Yes, I'd like to ask, due to COVID-19, would there be an extension with the deadline date for it to expend our carry forward funds? Because usually they have to be expended by September 30th. So would there be an extension given?
Dr. Howard Hall, this is Garrett Brundage. Yes, there is an extension. Right now, that extension is through December 31st.
When? I couldn't hardly hear you.
December 31st.
Great news. That's great news. It gives them more time to expend those funds. That's excellent. Thank you.
Any other comments from board members? Heard the resolution. All in favor, raise your hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Catchmore, yes.
9. Motion passes 9-0-0. I'm going to now, as we move on to Goal 5, I'm going to use the prerogative of the chair and ask board members, if you would, to move down to items 14.06 and 14.07. I would like to move the tax millage levy and the spending resolution up to the beginning of Goal 5, because I just would like to run the risk of having more people know about it. So people start to drop off as we get further and further in agenda, and I want the public to understand what's going on. So the first thing will be 14.06, the tentative recommended fiscal year 2021 tax millage levy.
Reading into record for board action, this is the calendar year 2020, fiscal year 2021, tentative recommended tax millage levy. Under Georgia law, the Board of Public Education for the City of Savannah and the County of Chatham is a recommending authority that exercises the power to cause the levying authority, the Chatham County Commission, to levy property taxes to carry out the purposes of the Board of Education. In accordance with law and policy, it is necessary for the board to tentatively adopt the recommended calendar year 2020 millage rates for both maintenance and operations and general obligation bond indebtedness and their corresponding levies on taxable property. The calendar year 2020 millage rates used in the projection of revenues for the fiscal year 2021 budget are 18.881 mills for maintenance and operation. This represents no increase in mills and 0 mills for general obligation debt, for a combined millage rate of 18.881 mills. The proposed millage rate for maintenance and operation is not in compliance with the rollback rate calculated by the tax assessor as required by Georgia State Law 48-5-32.1, and as such will be required to be advertised as a tax increase over the rollback millage rate. Tentative adoption of these millage millage rates is required at this time to meet statutory timelines for millage adoption. Accordingly, staff proposes these millage rates be tentatively adopted. Thus be it resolved, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, that the Board of Public Education for the City of Savannah and County of Chatham, as provided by law, does hereby tentatively recommend to the Chatham County Commissioners and ex officio judges thereof, and there be levied upon the dollar of all taxable property in Chatham County, Georgia, a general fund tax of 18.881 mills, a geo bond debt tax of 0 mills, and an aggregate millage rate of 18.881 mills in the year of 2020, fiscal year 2021, for the support and maintenance of public education, and that staff be directed to advertise such tentative recommended millage rates as required by law.
Before I ask for the motion, I just wanted to remind new board members that indeed, normally we have a budget when we recommend this. Because of the state, we have not got a final budget that we are proposing. So we're having to do this sort of out of line with what we normally do. But I would also remind you that it is tentative. That means we will then have 3 public hearings in Whitney to hear what the citizens have to say about that. Saying that is, you've heard the resolution. There a motion to that effect, please? Moved by Dr. Hoskins Brown. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Hines. Dr. Hoskins Brown, anything?
No, I appreciate you acknowledging the unusual circumstances. And also just reminding the public, we always have to advertise this as an increase, and it's always confusing. So it's not an increase, but I appreciate the work that our leadership team is doing on this.
Thank you. Ms. Hines?
I agree with Dr. Hoskins Brown. No increase for this year.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other comments from board members? Mr. Johnson, please.
I do understand that this is not this tentative recommendation is not an increase in mills. However, I do know that we do have a lot of folks in our community who are going to be worried about income coming in. So I do have a hard time agreeing to keeping the millage rate where it is and not doing the rollback rate, just because of the economic times that some of our citizens are in. So, and I've already let Dr. Levette know that I will not be supporting this tentative rate.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any other comments from board members? Mr. Catchmore, anything you want to say? I can't tell whether you don't have your light on, so.
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? Ms. Hall?
I just want to say that I am very proud of the fact that we have this 18.81 millage rate. I feel that we would be in very desperate straits if we had not had the courage to move forward with this a couple of years ago. The very people who might have trouble, Mr. Johnson, saying that this millage rate is high, those are the people whose children we are really trying to provide as much for and move their education ahead. We can't do that on a pauper's budget. We have to face the reality of the fact that we're one of the largest districts in this state, and that we owe our citizens the very best that we can do. And to do that, that takes money. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Any other comments from board members? Hearing none, you've heard the resolution. All in favor, raise your hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Catchmore, yes.
8, and all opposed? 1. Motion passes 8-1-0. The next item is the spending resolutions. And as this is explained, I would jump in before it's explained to remind people again that this is necessitated because the state legislature has not been in session, and does not have they're not in session still for a while to come, we have no budget numbers from there, and still we will be expending funds. And so that is what is necessitating this spending resolution.
We have an FY 2021 spending resolution. Whereas the Board of Education for the City of Savannah and the County of Chatham, for good and sufficient reason, is unable to adopt a budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020 and ending June 30th, 2021. And whereas the public exigency is best served by authorizing the superintendent to continue to expend funds to continue operations. Thus be it resolved by the Board of Education for the City of Savannah and the County of Chatham that the superintendent may expend funds from all funds for the month of July 2020 not to exceed 1/12 of the final amended budget for all funds for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2021, plus debt service and capital expenditures known to be due in July and essential COVID-19 related expenditures. This action taken on this third day of June 2020.
You've heard the resolution. Is there a motion to that effect? Moved by Mr. Johnson, second by Dr. Hoskins Brown. Mr. Johnson?
I will be supporting this resolution because we do need to still have our district function. And just so the public knows, just for clarification, the reason why we are giving the superintendent the authority to do this is because he is also the treasurer of the board. So that's just for a little bit of knowledge for the public, so they understand why she has this authority. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Hoskins Brown?
Yes, I just want to mention that, giving someone carte blanche on 1/12 of a budget could be frightening for some who like to see everything outlined. And I just hope that the public will understand, one, this is a conservative measure. That's not a huge portion of the budget. Two, a lot of the decisions and expenditures that were unanticipated were made by the superintendent and her team as the pandemic, came about. And so food service and how to pay for food service and how to pay the people who are providing food service, online learning, expanding that, whether you were completely happy with it or not, all of those things required creativity and autonomy of the superintendent, and the purchase of all the additional devices that we bought prior to today. So this kind of action is unusual, but it's necessary, and I hope that the confidence and the approval that you've had and the decisions that have been made thus far will transfer over to this process as we get through this period.
Thank you, Dr. Hoskins Brown. Other board members? Hearing none, you've heard the resolution. All in favor, raise your hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Kaczmar, yes.
9. Motion passes 9-0-0. Moving back now to the beginning items of Goal 5. We have a quarterly eSPLOS update and then a quarterly change order report.
All right, so where's that to go?
You got somebody there making a report?
We do.
Thank you.
Okay, under Goal 5. Under Goal 5, this report provides the status of the eSPLOS projects to include the revenue, the project progress, projects pending, and projects completed. This ensures transparencies of expenditures and completion of the commitments made to the public. On our eSPLOS 3, as of April, we collected $5.3 million. Our projection, we had projected about $2 million, but as you see, in March, we collected 5.7, and this month we collected 5.2. So We'll be changing our total projections for a project budget update, but the revenues coming in is not as bad as we predicted. I just want to go back and take a look at some of our program goals for 2020 and to establish some of our goals for 2021. One of the things we talked about is how we get local and minority contractors involved. And so what we've done is created a master list. We have about 10 direct contracts with local and small construction companies. Of that, we have expended out about $4.2 million in direct contracts. We talked about keeping our money locally. We have expended about $167 million of our East Block's funding. Of that, almost $123 million is locally. And I will get you the copy of this report. It's our LMWBE report that I'm reading from. But I just want to give you an indication that 73% of our dollars stay here in Chatham County. To continue to do that, we are self-performing a lot of projects. That means that we try to go out and look at how we can save money, and we had a goal of $6 million. We exceeded that. We also looked at how we make sure that our project, that we invest wisely and that we get the most from our interest, and $3.4 million was our goal, and we have exceeded that. Also in capital outlay, we had a goal and we have exceeded that. We now have about $10 million in capital outlay, and we continue to increase the focus on awareness of the East Blocks program. Just talking about our financials just a little bit. From a financial standpoint, on East Blocks 2, unallocated, we got about $486 million. We have about $1.7 million in our E2 program. And so those unallocated dollars will go to projects, and I will talk about where I think this funding should go to in the later part of the presentation. From a budget standpoint, because of COVID-19, we also looked at what we need to do in order to make sure that we have a healthy program. And as I discussed it earlier, we reduced some of our projections to $2.5 million, and we will go back and re-look at that. We also had some potential budget changes that we knew was coming up as a result of some of the project changes and some of the estimates that we made about 5 years ago. And so we wanted to correct those in our upcoming budget projections. Some of the proceeds that we reduced, if you look at 2020, we reduced that to about $44 million. That's almost a $30 million cut. And what we did, we took all of the proceeds as we got them in from January to March, and we kind of extrapolated that. We used a $2.5 million, basically saying that what we was going to get in our proceeds. But again, like I said, we got $5.7 million in March, 5.2 in April. So we'll go back and make adjustments to that to get a total budget for you. On this page here, we talked about that a little bit about how we was going to go back in the Salmon, those schools that we had put on hold. Again, all of these schools that we put on hold were in our 5th year. Previously to this COVID-19 reduction, we had about a $30 million surplus. Right now, we're showing $10 million, so we cannot go out and do the projects that are in Salmon. We will go back and put those in the 5th year. It's not like we're not going to do them, but right now, until we get the money in the bank, we just don't go out and start projects until we actually have the funds in the bank. On this particular sheet here is just some budget changes that we believe that we're going to have to increase some of the funding. Some of the funding budget changes, the Savannah Arts Cafeteria needs about $2 million more. And then on the multi-campus, it's going to need about $4 million. Jenkins is going to be needing about $1.3 million, and also New Hampstead. And all of these are related to permitting that the city is requiring us to do. And that's going to be about $6.9 million. And all of this is in our budget projection. Again, on the capital outlay applications, this is the application that is part of the General Assembly. Once they approve that, we should be getting a application to say that this money is going to be available, and these are the schools that's going to start. Elizabeth Epstein will go ahead and give us the project updates on all of the schools.
Thank you, Mr. Bozeman. Did I go the wrong way?
No, that's fine. That's the project schedule.
I'm pleased to report that despite COVID, our projects remain pretty much on the same schedules that you all saw in our last quarterly update. And here's a breakdown of each one. Just a quick listing of the projects we have in construction right now, kind of in order of how soon they're going to finish. White Bluff Elementary School replacement, of course, is a very large project of ours that's right on schedule, and got some photos here that already are outdated. We are making progress very hourly out there. Great looking project. Hopefully you get a chance to get out there and look at it in progress. Jenkins High School as well is coming. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask with regard to White Bluff, what's being done in light of COVID to transition all the classrooms and everything over there? I feel like usually that's starting to happen about a month before the school opens. And
yes,
what's the plan for that in light of the current situation?
Well, we have included in the contractor's contract is the turnover to us with a thorough cleaning. We will come in right behind that time with the cleaning services that we're providing at all of our facilities. So we'll be getting a double out there. They're required by contract to turn it over to us clean.
But typically teachers will all come in and, spend a few extra days setting up their classrooms and all that transition. Is that being staggered to limit access, or?
You're correct, Mrs. Wade. We had a schedule that is already taking place. They've already had an opportunity to go into the buildings, pack, and label all of their belongings. We're actually storing those items until we're ready to take possession of the building. So you're correct in regards to the timeline as it relates to the end of the school year, especially when we're constructing a new building. So that process has been completed, because as a part of that transition with the multi-campus, as you're aware, we'll be relocating Mercer Middle School over to Swangside Montgomery. So the first domino in there was to have the White Bluff family pack. We gave them ample time. We scheduled them to make sure we were social distancing, making sure that we didn't have large groups in the building at any time. So that has been taken care of, and their items have been secured off-site until we're ready to relocate them into the new building.
Okay, and then what is the date that we take possession of that building?
It is July 15th.
July 15th.
July 15th, Mrs. Wade.
Okay. I look forward to someday having a ribbon cutting.
We will, so are we. I was out there yesterday.
Jenkins High School replacement is on track for our opening next school year, 2022. And again, we are moving right along with construction. We have not experienced any delays specific to COVID, which is great news. That's program-wide. Some pictures there, progress, and again, more has been made since even these photos. New Hampstead K-8. Again, it's real easy to work on this project since it's a wide open site, but they are really making progress on out there, and schedule, budget, and things are looking just as we've been projecting right along. Islands High School athletics. I bet everybody's driven by there. It's really quite impressive. And we are substantially complete.
That's correct.
Beach High School is making remarkable progress as well. Here's some photos of slabs being poured and masonry coming up. Woodville Tompkins is technically under construction. Oops, I went a little fast, y'all, sorry. Woodville Tompkins we've broken ground out there and are starting our foundation work. Can I go backwards? How do I do that? Too far. There we go. Now, our multi-school campus at the former Groves High School. Oh, go ahead.
Excuse me, did you say Woodville Tompkins project, you've broken ground on it, or are you still in the phase of testing for soil? I didn't quite understand.
Well, you are technically correct. We have done some breaking ground in terms of getting some of the areas of the site ready, but we are what we're calling surcharging the slab out there to make sure that the compaction levels that we need are achievable. We had a great report last week, and we need one more of those to then just get started. So we're expecting that. I believe it's tomorrow. Once we have two weeks in a row where we haven't had any movement, then we are ready to build the building on top of it.
Also, Dr. Hall, on some of the items that we can go ahead and get started with, like the parking lots and some of the other site work, we've already got started with that. So,
due to COVID-19, how are we going to do any type of a groundbreaking ceremony as we traditionally do with other capital projects?
Because of COVID-19, we have not brought it into the forefront. I suppose if we're thinking creatively, we could do something. We could do something remotely, but right now
we're still trying to evaluate how we would do that, Dr. Hall. But again, with CDC guidelines of not having more than 10 people, it's very difficult to pull something off like that requires everybody to be on the site. But we'll take any ideas that you guys may have, but trying to get everybody out on the site from a physical standpoint, we just have not been able to work that out. And we're talking with other districts on how they're doing that, and basically they're just not doing it.
And the reason why I ask, because we're soon to have White Bluff in completion, and that would be a ribbon cutting ceremony. So what would be the difference between the two?
But even with the ribbon cutting ceremony for White Bluff, even with the Islands, we're pushing those back until later in August or September to try to figure out, exactly, what the CDC guidelines is going to be. And so that's why we hadn't had one at Islands either. Just trying to, get enough information and guidance to be able to pull that off. And right now, fiscally, you can't have more than 10 people. And so we have not figured that out, how we can do that other than doing a virtual, something like how we did graduations and things of that nature.
Can we move on, please?
Here we go. Multi-school campus. As y'all have known, we have our demolition package that we're getting started on, and we'll be starting that work soon. Savannah,
that was my next question about a tentative date. When would that start? Have you been receiving calls and actually received an email about the alumni actually participating with some type of communal activity to receive a brick from the school? Once they begin the phases, I'm not sure the process with that. The email was sent, and I will forward that to Dr. Levitt for more advice.
I believe we have received something similar to that in our office. It is absolutely standard procedure for our demo contractor to grab a pallet or two of bricks as they're demoing them. We can then put those in storage, especially with things going on now, and hold those aside, protected for the alumni to do with them what they will for fundraising or just if they just wanted to give them away. But we can absolutely make sure that our demolition contractor takes care of that for us.
And you have an idea when this demolition will begin as the start date or a window of time?
Currently, we're looking at a start date about August 15th. On and about that time frame. We're trying to work out the particulars with relocating all the students first. And then once we get all of that nailed down, then we will have a final start date. And so after we got the contract signed, we will have a better date for you. But planned for about mid-August.
Okay, thank you.
Savannah Arts Academy High School, we're excited to get going on that, but we're still in design on that project. Savannah High School Stadium is similar. But being and the type of project that we can really move quickly on, we should have a good aggressive start date for that stadium being ready to play in. These next slides are kind of just a summary of what we have just been going to, so you can just see it in one place. The amount of new construction that we have going is really quite something. And it's to our contractors' credit that they've just moved along in good faith. We're moving their payments along in good faith, and we are all working here all the time to make sure that this important part of the local economy keeps going. We've got additions here. Beach High School, as we talked about, and the Islands and Woodville Tompkins. Here's some smaller additions. Like I said, just a summary here. I'm scooting through here. Renovations coming up, and some of these are already under contract, but for life safety, ADA type of important improvements at our school. Smaller projects, but all of them very important to us. And these are all, as you can see, either in design or under construction. And moving through, here's some pictures of our security vestibules, some of our more recent ones for you to take a look at, hopefully have seen in person. Savannah High School, Gould, Johnson, and Myers. Any questions I could answer?
Is there one question, Dr. Buck?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I may have overlooked it, but where are we with the Lago additional classroom wing?
Ms. Hines, Lago Tibet is in our 5th year, and as I talked about earlier, when we first put our plan out, we had about $30 million that we thought we was going to have. So right now, Lago Tibet is on hold as we speak now, because basically that is only a 5th year program, which will be next year. And so once we have all of the resources, the revenues in our account, then we will start that particular project. But it's a 5th year project. It's an addition, so it's a 5th year project.
Thank you, sir.
Any other comments or questions?
Yes. Dr. Buck, we have the quarterly change order brief next.
Right.
Good afternoon. My name is Javon Jones. Recently been hired as a project executive under Operations Division, Capital Projects in East Block, so I'll be briefing the change orders. Okay. You all have been able to read over this document, so I'll brief by exception. On the first 3 pages, you'll see a lot of items for Allen's campus site. These are all included as a part of the $500,000 budget transfer that was included in the February board meeting. Ms. Hall stated earlier about being excited about some of the credits that we would be able to receive. If you can take a look, we have about $24,000 that we're going to get back from White Bluff.
I have a question.
Dr. Howard Hall.
Based on the number of change orders that we've had with Islands in the construction of building the stadium, what lessons have we learned as we move forward in building the stadium for the K-12 multi-school?
Well, the biggest lesson that we learned is have a defined scope. You know, when we started out with our athletics program, we did not really have budgeted dollars in there for the stadium. And we decided to save money and do that ourselves. And so basically what we did is we put together what we thought would be a budget for that. But what we didn't realize is if you ever been out to the islands, that's a swampy area. And so when you get into something like that, unforeseen conditions, and you're trying to make a swamp area solid foundation, one of the things we learned is that we got to have good, sound, technical data. And we have incorporated, every time we have a project, we have lessons learned at the end of the project, and we incorporate those. And we've already done so with the Savannah High Stadium. And so every project we have, we learn something from it, and we get better as a result of it.
Okay. Thank you.
That concludes this brief.
Any other questions about change orders? I think I would like to emphasize, like I always do, we initiated the change order report several years ago because there was a concern from the public that we were having too many change orders, and when we looked at them, they were being driven by the contractors. And so we did this report, and if you look at these, most of the change orders are at our request or at the city's making us do it because of their own zoning regulations. And so I think we've accomplished. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Howell.
I just don't want it to go by whenever anyone tells us that they have brought money back to us. I think that's a wonderful thing and it needs to be acknowledged. So if we've saved $24,000, I believe he said, then congratulations, and that's very wonderful.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. Any other comments from board members? Moving on, we have 3 more agenda items to vote on. These have to do with budget transfers. One is East Plus 3 Islands High School.
Yes, budget transfer request for East Bloss 3 Fund 312. The Division of Operations is requesting board approval for the transfer of funds between accounts for the Islands High School lighting project. This will place funding for the purchase of LED lighting for baseball and softball fields. This is from the East Bloss 3 unallocated account in the amount of $539,213 to the Islands High School site work account in the same amount. Thus, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board approve the transfer of funds between accounts for the purchase of LED lighting for Islands High School baseball and softball fields in the amount of $539,213.
Heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to that effect? Mr. Johnson moved. Dr. Hoskins Brown seconded. Mr. Johnson? Dr. Hoskins Brown? Any other board members have comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, raise your hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Catchmore, yes.
9. Motion passes 9-0-0. Moving on to another budget amendment, operating transfer, capital projects.
Yes, we have 2 budget amendments and operating transfers to bring to the board that are a way of reminding everyone of our commitment to improving our non-school site facilities for the improvement of our working environments and employee productivity. The first one that we have under the ownership of the Division of Finance, making this in a transactional component for budget transfer, is with background requiring that board action is approved due to the amount, where transportation is beginning a restroom addition project due to cost savings that have been realized from COVID-19. However, due to the COVID-19, the project will not be completed this fiscal year and possibly not the next fiscal year. Division of Finance requests board approval to move the original fund through an operating transfer to capital projects. This action will allow the project to continue at a future date. A summary of the proposed budget adjustments is listed in your agenda items, basically providing for the transfer of funds in the total amount of $1 million from general funds to capital projects for the expenditures of transportation construction. Thus be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board approve an operating transfer as stipulated in your agenda item to capital projects to create the transportation restroom addition project in the amount of $1 million.
Heard the resolution. Ms. Hall makes that motion. Mr. Johnson seconds. Before I ask you for comments, I would only say if you made the tour to the Department of Transportation, this is about 19 years too late. So for a new restroom. Ms. Hall?
Yes, Dr. Buck, along those lines, is Mr. Hediger saying that this money will allow that project to continue and be done, or is he saying we're putting this off? I didn't really get the whole resolution.
Okay.
Is this
To
money?
repeat, key component of this resolution, if there's any further questions, we'll turn it over to our capital projects team. But the key language in this breakdown for board action is the request and approval to move the original fund through this transfer over to our capital projects account. What this does, it allows us to continue at a future date for this project, because we are experiencing that there is the project not being completed this fiscal year due to the impacts of the COVID-19.
Okay, I strongly feel that we need to try to figure out how we can make this happen sooner rather than later. Like we said, the trip over there, to see those conditions for our employees. I just think that we could do a little more due diligence and see if there's any way we can move that time frame up, because we don't want to spread disease. We want to take it down, and those conditions were deplorable.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Mr. Johnson and Dr. Hoskins Brown.
I kind of want to echo what Ms. Hall said to try to get this project moved up as quickly as possible. Considering the fact that we are in summer now, we can probably get a lot of that stuff, demolition and the add-ons done while people really aren't in the building as much as they are during the school year. So the best thing we could do is get this thing moved up as quickly as possible. I do know that operations, y'all do have a schedule that you're looking at. So I know the superintendent's working closely with y'all for that. However, the more we can do to get those working conditions better for our family, the better off we'll be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Dr. Hoskins Brown.
Okay, I think I think some of the language around the resolution has made us misunderstand that this is being deprioritized. We're moving money from 3 operating lines from this fiscal year, and we're parking it in a place that it would be available if we don't spend it immediately. So we're not delaying the project. It's just that if it sits in fuel, overtime, and fringe benefits at the end of this fiscal year, it can't just kind of sit there and roll over. So we're moving it to capital projects where it can stay, because it's not going to get spent by the end of next month. So I think we're overemphasizing.
Okay. And if that, I understand. And Dion, if we're saying we're just moving it, and at the end of this fiscal year, we have to remember it's 2 weeks from now. So
right
now that I see that, okay.
Yeah, we're moving. My understanding is that we're moving it to where we can use it at a place that it's not going to expire, or where we wouldn't have to do a whole bunch of tail twisting.
Yeah.
Dr. Hoskins Brown, you are correct. What we're doing is creating a multi-year account.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what it's referred to as.
Thank you.
Ms. Kay, we'll just verify, when will the project start? When will we start
I believe we've started some initial work. We've have some initial design work on the project. So now that we have the money transferred over to accounts will be soliciting. I know our M&O department was working on some of the bathroom fixtures, based on their level of expertise, but then we'll start bidding at more intricate workout. One area is for the bathrooms, and the other is going to be for one of the parking lots. Specifically, we're going to start over at Interchange Court. So we'll get a schedule for you, and we'll add it to our updates to you periodically, so you'll know what the status of that work is, because it is critical that we move forward with it in a timely manner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
Any other comments? All in favor of the resolution, raise your hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Catchmore, yes.
9. Motion passes 9-0-0. Last item on our agenda is another transfer for capital projects having to do with the maintenance department.
Thank you, sir. Final action for board on this June 3rd agenda. This is another budget amendment and operating transfer in the same spirit of the board action that was just taken. This particular project is once again for capital projects and refers to the resurfacing at one of our facilities. The Transportation Department received board approval in February 2020 for a resurfacing project at the transportation facility. However, due to the COVID-19, the project will not be completed this fiscal year and possibly not the next fiscal year. The Division of Finance requests board approval to move the original fund through an operating transfer to capital projects. This will allow for the project to continue at a future date. The summary of the proposed budget adjustments are provided in detail in your agenda item, which would result in the movement of funds from the general fund to Fund 308 capital projects in the amount of $1,400,000 for the expenditures of transportation construction and transportation architectural fees. Thus be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board approve an operating transfer to capital projects to create the transportation resurfacing project in the amount of $1,400,000.
You've heard the resolution. Ms. Johnson's got his hand up. You making the motion, second by Ms. Hines. Ms. Johnson, anything?
The only question is where are we on this project?
Ms. Miller-Cagle.
Thank you. I had to unmute Dr. Park. I'm on the other side of the table. We have already completed the design work on the project. Once that is completed, then we'll be soliciting for a contractor to complete the work. And as I stated, for the bathroom work for the $1 million transfer, with the 1.4, we'll develop a schedule and keep that in front of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hines?
I shook my head no.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hines. Any other comments from board members? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Catchmore, yes.
9, the motion passes 9-0-0. That completes our agenda for today. I thank you, board members, for your attention as you sat at home and watched soap operas. And I would ask for a motion to adjourn, please. Dr. Brinkman, second by Ms. Hines. All in favor, raise your hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Catchmore, yes.
9. Motion to adjourn passes. Have a great rest of the week and weekend, board members. It's a pleasure always. Bye-bye.
Thank you.